Call to order the Select Board meeting for Tuesday, October 8th. We will begin with an executive session, and then at 7 p.m. we will re-adjourn out of executive session. But we're going to start with a motion for that. But I guess first I have to do a roll call vote of the people here. So Reed?
Here.
Catriella?
Here.
Barney Arnold?
Here.
Travis Snell here. And David Modell?
Here.
All right, so we have a quorum. And do I have a motion for entering?
I move to enter executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21, Reason 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Massachusetts Coalition of Police Local 201 and 201A. To reconvene an open session at approximately 7 p.m.
Great.
Second.
Great, and as the chair, I so declare the executive session. So, well, it says, it says the chair so declares, and so, but we will vote. We will vote to go into executive session. All in favor?
That has to be.
Aye. Okay, so we are back in session. Again, this is the Select Board meeting for Tuesday, October 8th. We have a full agenda tonight. We're going to have community input, execute the state election warrant, appointments and resignations. Then the ESC is going to present a municipal landscape policy for our review. At 7:30, we're going to have a budget planning joint session with the Finance Committee to talk about the capital planning and budgeting. And at 9 o'clock, we're going to have the public town administrator evaluation and discuss the fiscal 2025 goal review. Then we'll have a town administrator report, warrants and minutes, cemetery deed transfer requests, liaison reports, and then finally community input at the end of the session. So I'd like to start the meeting, and we've already called the meeting to order, so we'll start with community input. Is there anyone online or in the audience who wants to have any questions, comments? Seeing none, last chance. All right, we'll move on to executing the state election warrant. So you all saw that in your packages.
Do you want me to put the motion on the floor or have a description first?
I would ask if there's anyone, Ryan, did you need to do a description, or are we?
So this is as shown. The town clerk is transmitting the warrant for the election to you for your approval so that it can be posted timely and they can run the election.
Great.
Has this been reviewed and?
Oh, I love it. Knight Rider.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
You were saying?
On the recording, no less.
It's pulling up, I gotta go. Is everything in order with the warrant or with the election?
Yes.
Hours or plans?
I mean, I perused it, but I didn't
Yeah, I
read
perused
it
it.
back carefully. I just want to make sure whatever we're doing has been vetted.
Yes, and the town clerk's required to submit this to the state as well.
Good.
And the hours described for Carlisle, so this is Rosemary and Alana, our temporary town clerk, interim town clerk, and then the assistant. They're good to cover all these hours that they're describing here, because it's a lot of hours.
So
I mean, most of
these-
it's walk-in, I guess, but there are a couple of Saturdays, 2 Saturdays.
So that's the difference. Most of this is the hours that the town clerk's office is open already.
Okay,
And everything else is what's required by law to hold, to
Okay.
include the Saturdays.
all right, great.
Can I ask one other question? Is on this, there says deadline to submit an application and apply to vote in person absentee. How can you vote in person absentee?
I can't answer that without the town clerk.
Okay.
Let me read, where, is that on the first or the second?
It's on page 5 of the
Okay.
packet in
It's,
total, but it's the first page of
the
the memo.
memo?
First page of the memo.
Well, the schedule.
In-person
The schedule.
capacity
The memo.
to vote in state election.
I thought,
And apply to vote in person,
Submit an application.
absentee.
Maybe it meant to be absentee? I don't know.
I wonder if that's a
November 4.
typo. Deadline to submit an application and apply to vote.
Day before the election.
It's the day before the election, too.
Oh, well, I think what you have to do is, though, is show up in person in order to
All the addresses.
to ask to vote absentee the next day.
That's a
I
lot.
mean, you have
Is
to,
it the last day that you can show up
in person,
in person?
Oh, I was going to send it.
to ask to vote
Oh, you will.
absentee.
That would,
But
it's not
it's
under the
silly.
schedule
Because
above.
Friday, November
Oh, okay.
1st is the
You
last
said
day
I
you can
would,
actually
you-
vote early here at
You'll
Town
do it.
Hall.
Oh, so that's
You'll invite
absentee, it's a
This
different
is about an
classification.
absentee, somebody who
I don't mind
can't-
personalizing it.
didn't vote early,
send
can't
me the
vote
draft
on
of it.
election day, wants to vote absentee, the last, I
you
think,
have
if I
a-
read
I
this
think
correctly,
that's-
their last chance to submit an application to get an absentee ballot
Okay.
is,
And they have,
Monday
and by
at
the way, they
noon.
have to do it in person, because there's no,
Right, it's too
no
late
time
to
for them
mail
to.
it.
So actually, really, it should say deadline to submit an application and apply to vote absentee. To submit an, yeah, to person, in person submit an application, I
sorry,
think
I
that's what
didn't
they're
ask
trying. Yeah, but I
Before this
put,
meeting.
this is what I remember from past elections, that there were that sort of thing. Yes, we might ask somebody to clarify that language, but I believe that's what it is, that you have to come in person to get that application. They'll give you that,
but you have to do it
Ballot.
at noon on Monday before the
yes.
But that's
election.
not, is that part of the warrant, or is that just in the memo?
No, that's a memo.
So is that part of what we're voting on?
No, we just,
Warrant is the language below it, I think,
Is the
right? Yeah, the
warrant.
warrant that says
Yeah.
Commonwealth of Mass warrant.
Yeah, so I
Yeah,
guess the question is what we're questioning part of what we're voting?
no, it's the,
No.
we're voting on just the warrant.
Okay, good.
The town clerk's also not allowed to break the law, so. we
Yeah.
won't.
They're not?
So I'll move that the Select Board vote to execute the warrant for the November 5th, 2024 state election as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, let's take a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. All right. Unanimous. So moving on, we are going to do appointments and resignations. I believe there's one employee appointment, Kathleen Bond.
Yes, me, you, me. We're very excited to present for you for appointment Kathleen Bond, who's been serving as our Transportation and Office Manager in the Council on Aging and Human Services. She's extremely professional. She does a great job. The residents enjoy working with her, as does the staff. She has always expressed a desire to do social services in the town and progress in the Council on Aging and Human Services field. However, we did an internal posting to make sure there were no other internal employees. We did interview her. She was the only one who applied, but found her to be extremely qualified and competent, so we're excited to fill this. Just for your information, we will be backfilling her position. We've modified the job description to include service coordination and delivery to create some more redundancy in the Council on Aging and Human Services. Rather than the office manager role, there'll be a services coordinator and transportation coordinator. Worked this all through with the Council on Aging, with Carol, and with some of the members here on the board serving as liaisons. So we feel really good about this appointment and the future appointments to come.
Excellent. Move to appoint Kathleen Bond to the position of Social Services Manager for the Council of Aging and Human Services, and with an anticipated start date of October 9th.
Second.
Great. I had a chance to look at her resume, and I thought it was really impressive, and especially the number of publications. I mean, she's quite qualified, it seems like. So, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? None. Okay, so that's voted unanimously. All right, moving on to, the next is the ESC Municipal Landscape Policy. So if, Christina, I see you here, if you want to come forward, and we did get some information on this in our packet and a presentation. I think you've got something for us.
I do, yeah.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for your time. This is just another effort to embed environmental sustainability into policies throughout the town. And it's pretty simple and straightforward. Just the proposal to have a policy for any municipal landscaping, not on conservation land, that is different, but on municipal land, for instance, town hall or police station, fire department, to have, if there's any completely new landscaping, to have a minimum of 7% native non-cultivar plants, a maximum of 20% native cultivar plants, and a maximum of 10% non-native ornamental plants. And then if it's a portion of an existing landscaping that's being altered, slightly more stringent, being a minimum of 80% native non-cultivar plants, a maximum of 15% native cultivar plants, and a maximum of 5% non-native ornamental plants. And then I've also include, obviously, if they're doing work in landscaping, that is a great opportunity to remove any invasive species that are there. So pretty much that's it in a nutshell. And I've included in the proposal just definitions of terms and some resources.
So I had one question.
Yes.
And that is our ability to create such a policy for all municipal lands. I'm thinking about the schools in particular, and possibly even the fire station for other, for all the reasons that we have been discussing around some other things. So, how we would want to couch this, or if we need an extra paragraph describing this.
Yeah, what paragraph, well, you can talk about describing,
Well,
like describing the exact
because there's no, in the applicability, the policy applies to all new landscaping and any alterations to existing landscaping on Carlisle non-conservation municipal land. Well, that would include then, as far as I can read it, schools and fire stations. So I think
Right.
that has to be polished up, because I'm not sure we can make that policy.
Or we should just find out, right? Because I thought in our discussion about, was it the Highland building? We were talking about how the land is different from the building.
Well, the Highland building, the land, we own the building and the school owns the land.
So we'd have to determine if
So,
land owned by the school would be exempt from this policy.
I would want to check with council, but I do believe that it's under the policy of the school committee, but it's the town's land. So the school committee would have to allow it, but it is the town's land, so it would be applicable.
it's always very,
Next thing to
yes,
figure
okay.
out.
Anyways, I think that some reference to that policy and all that has got to be made in this, so that,
Yeah.
So this would largely fall on either, if we're contracting with somebody to do work on town land, then it would have to be included in the contract, what we're asking them to do.
it'd be included in all the RFPs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And
Okay.
Right, or if it's something, say, our DPW is doing, then we'd be asking, then those staff would be required to figure out how to do this and learn what's about the different plantings and then removal of invasives.
They are, I've included links
Yeah.
with lists,
Yeah.
so.
Have you checked out other towns that are trying to move in this direction, and any sense of how it's going?
Other towns have, in various degrees. It's either Arlington or Somerville has gone completely native on all their public lands. Of course, it's pretty much a city, so we're talking small parcels, small little bits. So I don't know of, I've not actually looked to see if there's any actual native species policies.
And then I guess I have another question about fields.
So, most of them are under our conservation land, and that would be completely
That's how
separate.
that's how
Sports
they,
fields or? It's not
Sports.
Recon.
Sports.
Recon.
you have sports
Spalding and
fields.
Banta Davis are under conservation?
No.
No,
she
I was thinking
misunderstood.
like Toll Field
Yeah.
and.
Oh.
Sports
Oh,
field.
I was thinking of sports fields.
Fields. Well, and
But-
Grass.
things like the,
That's grass, I mean, because grass ain't native. I mean, the
Right.
kind of grass that they're playing.
and I was thinking of something like if the bog house, we have a lot of ideas for the bog house, if it becomes a habitable place for families or whatever, and they may want to decide to put a yard out there for playing or whatever, and, would they be able to plant grass, or was that, going to be?
Well, if they owned it at that point.
If that's still our land, I don't
That
know.
would be their decision, right, if they were homeowners.
That's true, if we,
Yeah.
well, it
But
could
if it
be for
was-
just the condo, sometimes these are delineated as just a structure, and then the ground
I
is
see.
retained by the town.
Gotcha.
I'm
Well,
just
yeah, if you
asking
lease,
questions about
well,
it.
again, that's a matter of, let's take Benfield, the ground is ours, but it's leased, and so when it gets leased, it really, the control of the whole property then goes to the lessee.
So this is for any new landscaping or like any major alterations. It's not for maintaining what's there.
I understand, but I'm just thinking, let's say Benfield wanted to change whatever they've got there, since it's our land, do they have to, do they fall under this policy or not? And so there's lots of squirrely
Yeah,
things.
you'd have to do a whole education
We have to think about
effort.
before we-
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking about, the definitions would be helpful. I'm not as familiar with them, and I actually looked at the links to try and educate myself on it, and I thought, cultivar plants and non-cultivar, what constitutes a cultivar plant? And you have a definition here, which has been cultivated, genetically modified clone to enhance attributes desired by humans. And I was thinking, human beings, I think, have done that for centuries. Even Mendel was working with peas trying to, do the different thing. And so at what point is it a cultivar and what point is it not? And
So I think horticulturally speaking, native plants grown from native seeds have not been genetically modified. A cultivar is something that's been genetically modified. And I know that there's sort of like everything up to a point has been genetically modified, but if you go to like a nursery, it's sort of clear if you're buying a native plant from native seed, or if it's something that is engineered. It usually has like a cutesy name in quotation marks or a trademark next to it. So it's really been manipulated to alter
to be
its
hardier,
it's the color,
use
the
less
bloom
water.
time, double blooms, so it's sort of on that level.
But, and a non-cultivar is more than just a native plant?
No,
Not changed by
it's
humans.
not changed by humans. There are a lot of nurseries that sell native plants, but they're not actually native, they've been modified.
Okay, so let me try again. You can have non-cultivars that are not native. They're native to somewhere else, but they're
Correct.
still non-cultivars.
Correct,
And you can have native plants,
yes,
which could be modified or not.
correct.
So what you're asking really is that you would like mostly native non-cultivars.
Yes.
Like you have to have both those things.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a lot. Okay.
So if, let's say the dog park weren't underway when we had this policy, and this policy was then in place, so
I
they
was
would have to
thinking,
do
but
something
yes.
radically different than what they're currently planning. Yeah.
And it wouldn't cost any more. It's just like a great opportunity to have meaningful landscaping as opposed to, and it can still look beautiful, as opposed to having pretty things that don't support.
Yeah, because the idea is it's
Actually, I
going to
think
make
they were going
it,
to do pea stone, and then they were told that's too hard on the dogs, so that's why they're putting in grass. So, pea stone,
This is for the dog parks?
yeah.
yeah.
The grass won't stay green for long.
I mean, I think we can add something like for existing playing fields and, for obviously for like recreational, like pathways, whatever, this is more for the actual landscape.
Okay, okay.
So maybe we have to do some work.
Yeah, I think,
I'm just saying, I'm not at all opposed to this policy. I'm just worried about whatever ramifications it will hold, and trying to foresee.
through
Yeah,
first.
think them through before.
The practicality of it.
Yes,
And I'm not a municipal landscaping expert by any means. The existing landscape, how would you classify that in terms of what percent is,
100%,
is it all just non-native ornamentals or?
Most of it is non-native,
Okay.
yeah.
yes.
And then in the case of,
In
if
some
you're
cases.
maintaining existing landscaping and say plants die, can you, under this policy, could you replace those with the same plant? Or does that then become a new plant?
I would think that would be
Percentage.
the alterations to existing landscaping. And so instead of replacing a plant with something that's not beneficial, you can replace it with something that is.
And who, is this mostly DPW that does existing maintenance?
Yeah.
And are they in support of this policy? Have they been involved in this policy?
I have not spoken to them.
Okay, I mean, we should make sure that, I mean, I'm not opposed to it in concept, I'm just more opposed, my questions are all about practicality, who's doing the work, because sometimes well-intended policies can have unintended consequences. So I'd like to vet some of those aspects of it.
I agree. And similarly, did you do outreach to school committee or schools because of that issue?
That would certainly help us with the school
Right.
question that I had
Yeah,
earlier.
they should be on board with
Because if
it.
they were on
Are there other
board, then
groups?
they could adopt the policy.
Conscom, or it doesn't really affect
I have spoken
conservation?
to Sylvia, I have spoken to land stewards.
Yeah,
They're in
okay.
support. Sylvia was like, well, it should, anything on conservation land should go through them. And I'm like, well, yes, we're talking non-conservation.
So we got, we kind of got into this thing with the Board of Health. I'm going to draw an analogy that might not be great, but the Board of Health wants to change some regs, right? And
Yeah.
one of the sticking points is, I want to upgrade my kitchen, but I'm going to get thrown into like a whole tens of thousands of dollars of sanitary upgrades because you're saying all new construction or whatever they call it now falls in the new rules. So I wouldn't want to, like, we want to replace a mum with something else out here, and like, no, now you have to root out all the invasive species, because we shouldn't write it in such a way that a simple project becomes very complicated.
Well, and to add to that, I mean, Christine, you did mention earlier, you said, well, it really wouldn't cost more, and that's, that's great if that's the case, but I'd like to see something about that, because when I started looking through the plants, and I've had to buy some native species for wetlands and go to Framingham to do that, and I found, buying high bush blueberries and, winterberries and things like that are more expensive than if I had used some other species.
Actually, they have a huge discount for municipal plants, for plants. to use
Municipal
for
purchases?
Yes, huge discount.
This is the nurseries, or the state
the,
provides something?
The one in Framingham?
Garden in the Woods.
Garden in the Woods, that's it.
Yes,
Ah,
yes.
ah. So
And
you'd
as
have to
far
know
as-
where to go to get the
Yes.
discounted,
But the lists are included.
yeah.
And as far as cost for work, I mean, the work is being done anyway.
The work is the work.
The work is the work,
That does
right. It's
not-
more about the plantings,
Yeah.
because if it does, cost significantly more, I'd just like to know that, so we can evaluate that as a consideration of this.
Is there an opportunity to informally pilot such a policy on a project that
Oh, that's a
would
great,
make sense, like the dog park or something that's upcoming that requires some alteration
Well,
or
we just did the front of
new
the,
landscaping? Okay.
we just did the front of the town hall.
And how was that process? I mean, was it?
Well, that
onerous?
Well, they
Christina
took care of
did
it.
all that.
right.
But who did the work?
It looks great, by
Is
the way.
that-
LSC members and myself.
Yeah, right, and I'm guessing you don't want to do all the new landscaping in town.
It's like whoever will be doing the landscaping,
Yeah.
the work, they're gonna be doing the work regardless.
Right, but if it's DPW and they're not familiar with the list and what goes, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
I
we
don't
need
know.
to give 'em some
I have no
guidance and
idea how this
education,
works,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I would just want to vet that.
I can speak to Jim. And I'll also say that once established, native plants tend to be a lot hardier, so they actually
Yeah.
require less maintenance, so it'd be less time to maintain the landscaping once established.
Right.
And for a totally new project where there's new construction, it's not the DPW who does the installation. They
Yeah.
will do the
Right.
maintenance later, but you'll hire a landscaping company to do the installation of those things.
Right.
I think I would want to at least allow again, I think some more work needs to be done here, but at least allow for maintenance to be a little more, like, so you don't necessarily always have to replace an existing plant with, because I could see, I just think we have to think through some of the aspects of this. Good goals. And are there any grants that might be available if we adopt such a policy?
Grants for what?
Well, I'm just thinking of like, this is almost like an extension of the climate leader where that was about energy and this is a different tack on.
Resources.
I would,
But does the state of Massachusetts encourage this? You said there's discounts. Are there other opportunities to get funding from the state if you were to pass a policy like
I would
this?
think that perhaps there are grants if you're willing to rip up existing landscaping and replace it with
Okay.
all native. But that's not what
That's not what this
suggested
is
at all.
suggesting.
I don't think that grants would cover something that is going to happen anyway.
Yeah. No, this
In
is,
this instance.
this is the plant that died of, frostbite, and you have to replace it. And do you replace it in kind, or do you replace it with a native plant? And it's asking the town to consider
Right.
strongly to replace it with a native plant.
Yeah, with a little bit of leeway, because the percentages, right,
Yeah.
it's, the
Well,
new
that's-
stuff it's a max of 10% non-native ornamental, and then alterations, it's 5%. So there is a little leeway, right? for
Right, so if somebody
going-
donates
Yeah.
a plant in
Right.
memory of someone or whatever, then it's
Right.
not native, it's.
Yeah,
But if I'm replacing one, say I have we don't need to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but if I have an existing landscape and I'm replacing one plant and it's 100%,
Remember, this is municipal land we're talking
No,
about.
I know, but-
This is not private land, so.
but how does that,
what?
well, if I'm taking a native plant and say I have to replace 2 bushes out of 50,
You-
I'm never going to get to these percentages.
No,
So,
you just,
It's minimums and maximums as well.
Yeah.
So there's leeway.
right.
And, I mean, another example is like the police station, when they ripped up part of the landscaping to put in the ramp. And then I don't think they've actually planted anything
no, and the
since.
fact they're talking about trying to
FinCom showing up.
screen it, so,
But if they do,
yeah.
that is, yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just say, I think this is a great thing to move toward. And I think what we're just saying is, maybe flesh it out a little more and get more input from the
Well, do we need
DPW and.
an actual policy is the other question, or do we just
Yeah,
have
I think you
guidelines?
do.
Like that's,
Well,
okay.
right, if you're talking to DPW and get them on board anyway, they may start doing this just because there's interest in doing it.
Yes.
But the good thing
if an
about it-
arch-
Go ahead.
So sorry, if an architect comes back and says, well, no, I want, this looks better.
But we
That's
could
right.
put it in an
there's
RFP.
no- Yeah.
You could put that in an RFP, though, as terms of some of the project requirements. You can articulate those things.
Well,
But having it as a policy, the
I
good
think
thing
you
about
have to
that
have it
is
as a
it
policy.
rolls over whatever staff come and go, or whatever architects come and
Yeah.
go, it's there as something the town expects.
We're trying to embed environmental sustainability in policies.
Yep.
Different departments. And so I'll speak to Jim Hall, I'll reach out to the school, and
It would, also, the other random thought I have is, I have a daughter in high school who's actually interested in government and town and keeps asking me, ask what high school students can do. I don't know if there's any way to pair up with something at the high school or even at the elementary school where you could get kids involved with, through a biology class, something like
we're
that.
working on that.
I mean, that would be a great way to, I think, both generate support for such a policy, but also involve the community and kids and education in this effort.
It's a great idea.
Yep.
Especially at the school. Yeah, we actually have an idea of proposing a Miyawaki garden. I won't get into it.
Yep.
But it's an interesting approach to creating dense habitat, dense native habitat.
Yeah, because it
And
doesn't
other
just have to
schools
be
have done
pretty.
that.
You know, if the kids can learn through the landscaping, that's a win-win-win. And that's a lot of our municipal land anyway.
I think one other thing I'd add is just, to follow up on what people said about the cost. It'd be helpful to, not as the policy, but just as a piece of information, what the comparison of costs. And then if you go, right, so there's, when people ask, oh, so what's this going to cost us? We have some info.
And then some language in relation to like playing fields.
Yeah, I think we'd have to have, I mean, some information about that, because,
Right.
and how, how do you landscape a playing field without using grass,
Is it even land, I don't even, is
I
it
mean,
landscaping? I don't even
well,
know. Like,
but
what's
it's-
landscaping?
The thing is, we're talking about plants on municipal property and for whatever use, yeah, so it is landscaping, yeah.
We can just say excluding playing fields and.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
I
that.
mean, the
And
thing
you can
is,
work on a-
that's why, yeah, as I
That's why we're
said,
happy you came tonight.
Yes.
This is a good discussion to have, and it gives
Right.
you some ideas of how we're,
Beginning.
questions we
I
have.
think tweaking the language under alterations to existing landscaping, you could probably, because I don't know that we're planning on any new athletic fields in the time being, you could probably answer a lot of those questions if there's just more leeway and, or some more specificity in that language.
We do need to move on because we've got, we're beyond time, and we've got a budget discussion here that's
Yeah.
important, so.
Submit.
Thank Christina.
Thank you for coming. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
This is good. All right, we're going to move on to our fiscal year 26 budget planning joint session with
Nothing
the
in the-
Finance Committee.
packet for that.
And I don't know if
they
they're a
actually
joint
joining
session.
us?
I don't know if they are.
So it's probably my fault, so I did extend them the opportunity to come here. I did present to them on Thursday, so
And I was there.
I think they saw it as optional.
Oh,
Okay.
But
I
it
was
more
there
to see
Thursday.
the information, and what they did relay at their meeting on Thursday, not speaking for the committee, but trying to relay information, is they're interested in your goals as it pertains to this information, to start the process and to make sure the budget's being shaped in a way that they have clear direction from you.
I was there as the liaison, and to just interject, and one of Ryan is correct, the overarching thing is that they wanted some guidance from us, and there's some specific things that Ryan's going to go through that they wanted to have us weigh in on, so we'll talk about those.
can you
Good.
slide the little,
So I'm going to give you a 3-minute walkthrough of the tool that is behind the presentation, and then start the presentation. There's a ton of time for this so that you can dig in. The goal here to show you this tool is not to talk about the tool necessarily. We can dive back in. It's just to show you that it comes from data. So this is the financial forecast portion. This is projecting out expenses for the operating budget only for the next 5 years. So
Excuse me a second.
You-
Ryan,
you
sorry
need to make
interrupt.
it bigger.
But is there a way to,
can't see it.
yeah.
I'm just walking you
Can you
through.
walk-
I know, but I still want to
So I
see.
really
don't
don't
want
want
us-
you to see the numbers. I just want you
Oh,
to
you
see the
don't?
tool.
Okay, all right.
There is a tool, and it is a spreadsheet.
Okay.
And there
got
are
it.
numbers in the
You don't have
spreadsheet.
to see
And there are
anything.
lots of numbers, so it's a
I
very,
really don't want you to get into the.
Okay.
he wanted to just blind us with a lot of numbers.
Okay.
So each tab represents something that is building data into the presentation of the summary.
And
So-
the tabs are on the bottom.
Yes, so on the expense side, every line of the budget is multiplied by a variable and extended out over 5 years in order to create the summaries in the budget request that you'll see.
Okay,
Same is true of revenue.
okay.
And I'm sorry, Ryan, for expenses, is this assuming kind of a level service budget? This is to maintain existing versus,
This is our projection of what expenses will be.
okay.
What you do for policy in those terms is up to you.
No, no, but he's right. You must make an assumption
I
that
did,
it's
and I'll show
level
you the
service.
assumptions.
Okay.
So then, you're starting to become familiar with this tool, so this is a levy analysis, and I really don't want you to get into these numbers yet. I promise you'll get a chance to dig
Okay.
in. But this feeds into an analysis, and I want to talk about this tool a little bit, so really going to blind you with numbers. So I worked with Brian on this in order to try to make the levy analysis tool even more impactful. So the reason why this is the way it is, we mostly have single-family homes, which drives the average tax bill in town. So most of the average tax bill is built by single-family homes. However, this year, a lot of the value of our property shifted towards non-single-family homes. Not a lot, but enough to skew the number away from the average tax bill. In addition, new houses that were built this year were well above the average, which dragged everything up, which diffused the taxes out in a good way, right? So it made it more dispersed. So we modified the tool a little bit to account for some of that. It'll never be perfect, but it is a way for you to measure the impact by isolating the variables of the budget. So all of these tabs are building that tool. And then revenue projections is my way of looking at the past in terms of revenue and seeing how much give we have in specifically local receipts, because state aid is pretty pegged to whatever decision they make. Local receipts is where you have some wiggle room. Okay, so there is some data that I can dig into at any level you want that is underlying the following presentation. Thank you for your patience. And I will say a lot of work went into this, so Kelly and Brian in particular spent a lot of time on this. David has helped me in the past in creating this model, and so has Craig from the Finance Committee. So a lot of people built this tool. And it's capable of doing whatever you want, so we can change the variables, and we'll talk about what is in the assumptions here. Okay, so the tool itself is just for planning. It's not an exact budget, so we're not saying it's going to be this cost. We're projecting out the cost so you can see what would happen in various models. The expense side for sure has a lot of assumptions that you can change if you want to see how that impacts the budget. And this is a tool that you can use during the budget process if you want. This is just the first look at what we think is coming. And then it does consider town debt levels and capacity, but it doesn't include the full capital model, but you're going to get that presentation next. My goal is for next year for these two to be combined into one presentation, so we're not jumping back and forth. So some basic revenue assumptions, again, I can dig into the data if you want to, is that state aid will continue to increase at about a 1% level for Carlisle. Last year we were around 2.5. Maybe 2 would be less conservative, but it's not going to be a lot. So if you're following the state news, the state budget is not in the shape it was 2-3 years ago. So we should not expect relief from the state. Local receipts we've increased at 2%, and there is some ability to increase or decrease the conservatism in local receipts, which would allow for more revenue and for more use in the budget that would offset taxes. However, that will also reduce your free cash generation, which you'll see in the capital plan it has a big impact. And then property taxes, 2.5 is the allowable, so we use that for this model. We did not use free cash in this model, which you did use the last couple of years to offset some costs. So if you project out revenue, using those assumptions, what you see is for next year, a 2.85% increase in revenue. That number doesn't have a lot of meaning without the context that comes in the presentation. However, you see it's a little bit less than the future because you're not using free cash like you did before. So you injected some free cash and you're taking it out, which means you have less revenue for FY26, but then a more steady increase in the years past, assuming you don't use free cash again.
So there's no free cash, there's no free cash applied in this model?
In this model, no.
Besides the 150. But
That's
was
25.
25.
That's
25 is the base.
25, yeah, we're 26, okay.
That all the
We're
numbers.
spitting out
We're in the
millions,
next.
yeah, I mean, we spit out more than that, but anyway, okay.
So this is certainly where there is the most ability to change. This is what we believe as a staff is the best guess at what the numbers are, and I'll walk through them quickly. Employee wages, most of the contracts and others are tied to some type of 1% merit plus any COLA decision, so we thought 3.5 is a conservative number. Employee support and contracted services are tied to the 2.5% increase that we are allowed. Utilities are fluctuating somewhere between 5 and 10%, so we took the lower number. Supplies, that same 2.5%. Health insurance, last year we saw a 10% increase, and we're going to continue to model it that way until the market indicates otherwise.
And we're also stepping up, right, our contribution?
Yeah, so we were able to do that, step up and absorb last year's big hit for 10%. So 10% is the high end.
And where are we at in that process, just as an aside, do you know?
How much is the town covering?
We're going to be putting together another advisory group to look at that. We won't get those numbers until Januari's MMA meeting. That's where Maya releases their
Yeah.
health insurance number.
But in terms of
I think we've stepped up.
the town's contribution.
I think it's, are we at 43 now? I'm sorry, 53.
No, 57.
Is it, are we,
We went up
we're
by
at, because we
1%.
did 5 and then 3, yeah, okay,
Okay.
57.
Ryan, you're going to provide this to us, right?
Yep.
Okay. I see.
Yeah, because it wasn't in our packet, so we.
Copious
made a
notes here.
time.
Well, I just want to remember, so.
Yeah,
think about it.
I get it.
All right, so retirement assessment, we got absolutely, we already know this number, we got absolutely hammered. So the increase for this year is 26%, which is a little over $400,000 in our budget, which is a lot. They are offering a smoothing option, which is 19 and 19. There's a little bit of an interest penalty for that, and that'll become a budget decision, but 19 is a real number. So they're trying to catch up for the sins of the past in Middlesex, and small towns are being hit particularly hard. I have an inquiry with them in order for them to explain that, because bigger towns aren't being hit as hard, but we don't have a lot of wiggle room here. And then liability insurance, we were able to sign a 2-year rate lock with Maya, so 5% is a pretty good estimate. Then schools, somewhere around 3.5%, just in the model. And again, that number can
That's
change.
the high
That's the high
school?
school.
And the local school.
Is transportation for the schools, is that under contracted services, or is that under the school budget, or?
It's in the school budget.
Okay.
We also hold debt and OPEB contributions constant. You'll see reserves and debt show up later in this presentation. And then the FinCom reserve, gently increasing that. It is no longer 1% of the budget as you level fund that 150 year after year. So if you look at what those variables do to the projected budget, you'll see a budget increases in FY26 and beyond, well over 4.25%. So pretty large jumps.
Basically for level service.
Well, I don't know what the assumptions are
Well,
yet.
we haven't, and you've not layered in the debt
Well,
yet.
I know, but I
Debt
mean,
is just held constant, so it would be, I'll show you the debt and
Yeah,
how it.
right. I mean, don't forget, you're only seeing half the thing, because we got building projects that need debt service, so.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so to give that a little bit more context, so expenses versus revenue. The town is not bringing enough money, short answer, to keep up with its expense trends, and you see that over the years. So although there is more revenue in FY26 than we are spending, that goes down as you go along.
Flips.
To,
Yeah.
2030, where we are now eating heavily into our excess levy capacity.
But before you hop to that, so, I mean, you can make any assumption you want, right? But I think basically what Ryan's been saying is, as we get more accurate with our assumptions, we can cut finer to the amount we budget for and what we end up spending gets close, you know,
More
we, because we were inaccurate, and also, not for nothing, you know, just our inherent conservatism, especially going back to Larry Barton, we would essentially overtax. So we were always spinning out 500,000 or more free cash, and then we'd use the free cash. So it would sort of self-adjust, but if we're going to be more accurate, and especially if we're trying not to basically overtax on the operating side, then there's less of a cushion, right? We get more accurate, so we kind of come in at the, we
You're not
spend the number we
bringing in more
budget.
tax than we actually.
Right, and so
need.
you don't have that free cash lever. The other piece of it is, which gets to capital, is if you do have free cash, it might be better, you know, well, better. Another use of free cash is to apply it toward debt on projects, right? Because we generally, I mean, the operating rule at the FinCom level, you know well, Scott, is don't really get in the habit of using free cash to patch up your operating budget. You should only use it when you have a special thing you need to use.
Okay, so far, the takeaways I wanted you to see, not a lot of revenue. Expenses are pretty reasonably estimated and are exceeding our ability to pay. And the revenue versus expenses is showing a decline in capacity. So levy capacity, what levy capacity is what you can tax versus what you are taxing. So we have not been taxing to the max. The main project here is almost $2 million in school debt that wasn't taxed. So you didn't go above 2.5% in order to capture the cost of the schools, which did decrease tax amounts and was good fiscal conservatism. However, it created a situation where you have more that you can tax if you want to, and that's a tolerance issue. But if you see and were to expend at this level, if you were to continue to spend at the way the spending is assumed, that excess levy capacity gets eaten away, which we showed you last year, from almost 3.8 million to under 1 million, which means you're taxing more than 2.5%. For a little bit of context, if you look at the towns around us, if you look at my own Dunstable, Broughton, Harvard, Acton, Concord, in the next couple of years, will all be going for operational overrides for this reason. So expenses are just,
Littleton went for one, right?
Littleton, yeah.
And Westford's going for one?
and I believe it was
And Acton went for one, or is going
Yeah,
for
Acton-
one, like
a large chunk of the state last year
Martha was saying today,
Yeah.
today.
with another Acton was the only one around that passed.
Yeah.
Westford too. So a lot of towns are going for overrides for this reason. So this is why you're not, because you have this excess levy capacity. So you can go to 3.25 if you want to, whereas other towns have to ask. You've already asked and didn't do it, so you have this capacity. But that's going away, which again shows expenses exceeding capacity.
Well, and just as some commentary, when I did the select board training back in June, the biggest concern or complaint was that from select board members in towns where they had no excess levy capacity, they needed an override, the community was fatigued and wouldn't pass an override, and they can't maintain level service. So,
That's the impact, you have to cut.
yeah, and so I would say one of the things as terms of long-term goal is, do we want to, as a town, we probably don't want to get to a point ideally where we don't have any excess levy capacity, because you can get really boxed in at that point.
Right, and I think, that's a great point, and like, there are certain trades that aren't, at this high-level summary, but for example, our policy of reserving for OPEB, like, it's kind of self-imposed, and it's good housekeeping, but I'd rather not spend budget that money and save my override chip for some time when I really, those kind of things matter, right? And
Well, the other thing is, though, we could go for debt exclusions, and then you're not, that helps.
I don't even think this includes any of that.
yeah, but you have to service it. Sooner or later, it comes back to you, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's just an important strategic thing to keep in mind
Yeah.
is,
I agree, we should, we lived it in the '08 time, and it wasn't happy, right? And we managed, did we have an override? I can't remember. We
No, I don't think
pushed
so.
them through, we managed to squeak by without it, but it was,
Oh, 08.
yeah, it was tough. I remember it being tough, and we had to make some big cuts.
16 years ago.
So
Well,
I
yeah.
can illustrate for you. So you did pass an override last year. You passed it for the police station and the fire truck. If you roll the fire truck into your operating budget as it exists now and you don't increase taxes, then your excess levy capacity will go up because you didn't tax. So you could tax more, but you didn't. The police station too. So that might wash because you're increasing the budget and increasing the taxes to pay for that. So the levy would wash. But if you tried to roll it all into the current operating budget, then your excess levy
But
capacity.
when you say we passed an override, you mean we
We
put something in
excluded debt.
the
Debt exclusion.
debt exclusion, right? That's
That's
not,
kind of what
but that's,
case.
I'm talking about
Excluded debt is an
override.
for
The
debt.
2.5%.
Yeah, it's an override for, right, but it's not like an operational override.
strategically, we need to
Yes.
protect some level of excess levy capacity is my point.
Right, I agree with that, yep.
What that amount is, I don't know, but
So this is important, and because the tax impacts are what drives most of your budget decisions. Please know these numbers are conservative, so this can change, it may hold. The impact of the spending as modeled here versus the revenue for next year would be I should look at my screen here, 4.45% increase in the average tax bill, with your target being 3. So at the bottom, I modeled this for you. So if you wanted a 3% increase, you would need your proposed levy increase to be 1.1 million, and you would need to cut about 533,000 out of this expense model, not the actual budget requests. Those haven't come in yet, but this expense model. Which means all those variables we're projecting, 500,000 would have to come out of that, or you'd have to add free cash or some other revenue source. State aid would have to go bananas, some way of cutting into this. If you don't, then your average tax bill for just the operating increase alone for FY '26 would be 4.45%. And you can see it modeled over time. So the more you control in '26, the less the impact in FY '30. There's a lot of modeling and assumption here if you wanted to get into.
well, and then how much of that increase is even under our control when you talk about retirement and health? I mean, there's, even within, you say 500,000, but that's not over there's really certain levels.
There's
you
free
can-
cash,
No, but what I'm,
there's
Talking about
OPEB.
what to cut, like.
no, but the point I'm making is,
I'm telling you.
is
what's
within,
in
but, yeah, right, within,
a lot of-
my high-level point is within those expenses,
You can't cut your insurance and your, oh, right.
of a $30 million budget, there's probably,
Well, no, I don't agree. I think that obviously is in every business, and especially in all municipal businesses, like 80-something% is wages, right?
you know,
You can't, most of them well, we just talked about bargaining units. A big percentage of our town labor force is under a collective bargaining agreement, and some people aren't. And this has been the point, I certainly made it when I was negotiating school contracts. You can have what you want. The lever we get is to cut heads. That's all we get, right? If we have to continue to increase the compensation package above that 3 or whatever, your lever is to cut positions. Larger classes, fewer police, that kind of thing. We have that control.
Well, the third of our budget, though, we have less control over at the high school. We have less control.
Well, the high school, the high school we don't have control.
I'm not saying we don't have control, but it's.
No, but big chunks, not little chunks, right? Insurance, I know, we can't do anything about that, retirement, et cetera, et cetera. So, but wages really is the lever. We only have a very crude leverage on it.
Well,
Yeah.
head count is the lever
Head count is the lever.
versus wages.
Right. I mean, a little bit of wages, but really, we don't want philosophically to penalize our workers, our employees who are not under collective bargaining.
Right.
And we have, some limits on our collective bargaining, and at the end of the day, then we have to say, like we did in 2008, I sat with the superintendent, like, we're cutting sections, because what can we do? Got to get to the numbers. So, that, again, like not wanting to get into an override, you don't really want to get there.
And the only point I'm making is someone may hear, oh, $500,000 on a $32 million budget, you can figure that out, and it's not that simple, because.
No, it's simple. That's why we get paid so much. Because we're good at this, right?
So, last year when we did the budget analysis, we projected that the tax impact was going to be around 3.08% of the levy. It ended up somewhere around 2.4%. Okay, so we were very conservative with our numbers. Some of it was that levy modeling that I talked about in the beginning. So that shift made our number overly conservative. It can certainly go the other way, but it is more likely in Carlisle that it's not, so that this number is conservative.
Right.
In its estimation. So to put it exactly at 3 isn't the idea. It's more to show you that at this spending level, your 3% goal is going to be really difficult at the service level that you are saying the town needs. Which is why anytime any position comes up or anything like that, I'm constantly talking to you about how to be more efficient with the budget, because you've told me that 3% is all that would be tolerated in the operating budget. That's why these things are coming around. So every one of the budget decisions, when you have the opportunity, does matter, because there's only so many places to cut, to Scott's point. This just shows you your tax bill. It's kind of a mean slide for people who live here.
Let's see, I can read the numbers on the left hand, 17, 18, 19, yeah, 21.
Starts in 25.
Crossing the magic 20K threshold here.
Yeah, the 20,000 average tax bill threshold, you'd reach it at this spending level in 2030. So realistically, 2031, 2032.
Note to self, roll off board
Time
meeting for 20.
Time to move to your new location.
Yeah, where's that exactly?
Yeah.
All right, so this is a dangerous slide, but I believe information is powerful. So this adds in the police station, which has already been passed.
Yeah.
So assuming you don't roll the police station into the so that number up top, that 4.5% or that $500,000 cut does not include rolling the debt for the police station into the budget. So this models that for you. So the payment for the police station at a full borrow of 3.6 million, at 30 years, 5% interest, so there's variables there too, would be about $160 a year to the average home, which means in FY27, you wouldn't be looking at a 3.9% tax increase. You'd be adding a little bit under 1% to pay for the police station, which would make the average tax bill 4.74%. So if you're going to add buildings on top of the operating increase, I do believe you need to start socializing that now.
Yeah.
That this is on top of the average tax
That's
bill
one of 3
increase,
projects.
Right.
which was approved by the voters, but people
And
need to
your
understand
model,
that.
I'm sure you did, you modeled the decline of the schools that's starting to come down.
So I was going to show you that next.
Okay. So this is just, not overall, this is just incrementally adding a project.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know, the people at home can't see me stand up.
Can you maximize the slide, or does
Yeah,
that
I
mess
can't
up
see- I
your
can't see it
Zoom?
at all. I mean, it's like
If you
looking
go into
at-
presenter view, does that,
Presentation mode, you know.
The people at home.
You know what?
I can,
Well, I don't know, there's much of anybody.
That's
Now it's big,
Cynthia.
too.
Cecilia and
I can actually read it here.
Cynthia.
I can't, still
So
can't.
remember, this is FY '27, it's a couple years away, but if the average increase based on the conservative spending models and everything that's been shown here was $710, you would add 160 to that, which
Right.
would create the new tax bill.
Right.
So you've overrided your ability to pay for debt, which means you could increase the taxes, the residents have said that, for the debt alone, so that 160 would be that.
Right.
Would be
And
the
this
debt.
is for the side, this is for the budget of the police project. is what,
3.6 million?
3.6
And
million.
that's debt service and takedown on the 30-year
Yes,
loan, right?
that's everything.
Right.
All in per average house. An average house
Right.
is around, again, 1.2 million, so some
Yeah.
pay less, some pay more.
I think we're number 4 and it's tied for, there was an article on that.
What's
Yes, we
that?
did very well
Our
on
house
that.
value, our average
Carlisle, yeah,
house
we're
cost.
like top, definitely top 10, might be top 5 now.
Of what?
Median home value,
Okay.
yeah.
So there's a lot more debt and others in the capital presentation, but I wanted to just summarize this forecast. So this is just the operating side. And one of the assumptions in the capital plan is that you'll hold that 3% tax rate on the operating
On the
side. So
operating
this is a
side,
whole
right.
presentation for just that one bullet in the capital plan.
Right.
So you will need to grow your revenue in some way in order to cover for this. You can make the model less conservative, right? So you could increase revenue and spending, but what that's gonna do is cut into your free cash generation, which is fine, but that has an implication as well. You will need to increase your revenue or decrease spending to meet the 3% tax target, regardless of what you do or how conservative the model is. You're definitely gonna be cutting something. And then.
So just stick on that for a second, Ryan. So if we said, because you can only hold one variable and then the others shift around, right? So I remember last year, maybe it was, or 2 years, we were kind of hard over on the 3% number, right? So we
Yeah.
sort
Last year.
of pinned it to the 3%, and then we kind of looked at what everything else does. If we do the other thing and we pin it to level service, you're saying what? It's 4, it's in the high 3s, something like that, right?
At least the high thirties.
Yeah, okay.
High threes?
Let's call it 4. So it's for simple math. Like, it's simplified, but let's just say, if we again hold to a 3, and whatever that means operationally to cut, then, and we are at peace with a 4% tax bill, the police station can get paid down. If we go level service and we use up that percent in the operating side, now you go to 5, and if we say we don't like 5, like then we would say, well, okay, then don't build the police. I mean, those are the kind of, on the high level, those are the kind of trades we have to, philosophically, we need to think about that.
So if you wanted to have another session with me individually or as a group or with the finance committee, so here's the power of the tool. So if you said, or health insurance comes in, it's only a 5% increase this year. So if you look at the tax bill of 778, 4.5% increase, if you go to the expense side of this model, you change health insurance to 0.05, you'll see a reduction.
Right,
The
immediately
tool
comes
automatically reduces it. So if you wanted to model different scenarios, what would school spending be? What would this spending
Like if
be?
you deferred road maintenance or whatever, you
could use it in this
plug
way.
it in, right?
So you said that this model overall, in your estimation, was leaning toward the conservative side, correct? As kind of so you're applying no free cash, you're saying the model's a bit, if the model is conservative, is the idea we would have then free cash that would be applied? So where does the conservatism reflect in downstream?
It means more free cash, right?
Which means some of that deficit,
I have hope that some expenses will come down a little bit and that revenue will be a little bit higher. So I think the actual deficit you're going to be cutting, if I had to guess today, which is really early in the budget process,
in each year.
it's 350,000.
So in that year where it's like 600, maybe it's only 350.
What new starts?
That would
what's
be
your new-
great.
What's your growth assumption on housing? starts?
300,000 a year
So,
in new growth.
and what is that, like 10 houses or 15 houses?
No, but there's a wrinkle in that too, because the houses, haven't they, the land value went up? We had,
So land and the average home cost is high, which means the projection of the taxes is a little conservative as well.
Right.
So let's say you came in at 3.4% tax increase. If you had the same type of year you had this year, then the tool would be off around 0.3. So the average tax bill would be closer to 3. But it can go the other way too. It's just hard to picture in Carlisle housing values going down so low that it would go the other way.
Right.
And I know, and where are we at? I know a lot of what I've heard from individuals, a lot of the complaint around tax bills, sure, there's the overall growth, but it's in the reallocation or the revaluations.
But not just
No, I know, but I guess my question is, as a town, where are we with that? Because I know a lot of people have been, their assessment has gone up dramatically, and they're feeling the pain from a individual tax
Right.
bill. Has that kind of been caught, because I know we hadn't done that
I
in a
think
while.
so, that Ryan would know. Like, Brian, that stuff sort of flushed through now, right? I mean, people have absorbed, deck house people have absorbed a big step increase. They can piss them on, but then it's there. It's not going up more, right? It's,
So the only real data point I have to give you as to whether or not things have calmed down is the number of people who are filing for abatement. So a couple years ago, it was over 90, I believe, and last year was at 19.
Okay.
So we'll see this year. They did pre-publish the values like they talked about. They have
Right.
increased the
they
quality
did
of the
pre-publish the
data.
values, right? That's
There
right.
was some chatter about it, but.
Yeah, but it kind of, right.
But I also know we hadn't done it in like, there were
Right.
some years.
Do you have new growth in the levy?
300, he said 300,000.
300
I
is
missed
small.
that, sorry.
So this year, the new growth number, your sneak peek is going to be around 320. So Brian's estimates are pretty good, that 300 is a good number.
I haven't gone through this model, obviously, and run those scenarios, but I would think that based on all those variables that you can change, the school is the most impactful. When you change that 1.1%, you're going to have a bigger impact than you're going to have on any of the other values. So, in thinking about this, that's what, to your point, David,
Yeah.
I mean, this is, but every little thing matters too throughout the budget, but that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your
Well, but schools, what was your growth assumption? for
3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, so, I mean, having done, many of us have done a lot of years with the school committee, right? So you got the wage thing, and a lot of it is collective bargaining, like we talked about, and they have the steps and lanes, and there is an ebb and flow, and I don't know now, but it was, we kind of like we were talking about the police. There was an older labor force, so there weren't so many steps. And then they began, as that ebbed, we hired younger, so my guess is we're in a step period now, which means that, I don't know, I'm not sure, but
And
the
that's-
average wage would go up. If you're in where a lot of your teachers are still in steps, your average wage is going to be more.
I think,
But I think,
I forget what the percentage is, but I think it's either somewhere between 40 and 60% are at the highest level.
Okay, still.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got that, and then you've got, the biggest uncontrollable lever is the out-of-district placements. Because
Yeah,
single out-of-district
yeah.
placement could be a six-figure thing,
Yep.
and it's very hard to handicap that in such a small district, right? So,
And outside of wages, even like the transportation costs have
And
gotten.
transportation,
is
the bus
another
contracts were way
real,
up.
and that's going up significantly in the new contract. So, I mean, there's some,
so again, things that are hard to, and that's hard to control at any population level.
honestly, at a maintain level service, even like 3.5% is still difficult to do when you factor in.
Well, think about what we
built-in
just
wage
went through. I
increases.
mean, we went through a period of, what was a year at least, that was sort of 8% inflation or 7%, and now it's modulating into the 2s and 3s, but just now, right?
Right.
And who knows, so, yeah, it's,
Where does the allocation projections for the high school fit into this? Are those baked in
For operating or for debt?
for both, or just our allocation toward the high
operating
school?
like our ratio.
Our ratio for the high schools? I
Assessment
know
ratio,
that's,
we should know that, right?
Well, yeah. So they did predict that there would be another quote-unquote bubble year, but.
but are those
now they're predicting
projections
it's going
built,
the other way.
built into the model?
Yes.
Okay. Because we also,
I don't have strong fidelity on those numbers, though, because Concord building a new middle school.
yeah,
Plus the change in the economy is trending that we have less students than Concord.
which is good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
we also, we benefited for 5 or 6 years, our overall budget from our allocation decrease, which
Right.
really helped us sustain a lower
Yep, that's
tax
right.
increase by doing nothing, just having less students.
right,
And if that were to reverse in any meaningful way, or be more than what's projected, that would have a substantial impact on our ability to
Yeah, I think that,
And we-
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, I was just saying, and that, isn't that what we thought was gonna happen when we went through this process last year? And you're saying now it's not, they're changing the,
Now we're not sure.
Yeah, the middle school's going to open next
The
year.
old projections had Carlisle's numbers going up and
Right.
last
We
year.
went down, then we leveled out, then we ticked up,
I thought we
and
were gonna come up again for one of the years,
in like,
26.
like a spike
maybe
in
in 2 years, I
Or a
think you
year
said.
even, like
Yeah.
soon, but maybe
that's one of those numbers that,
that has a big impact, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
But-
wonder about private schools too, like, are more people going into private school when they get to a high school level? I don't know, but it'd be interesting to know the statistics.
Well, it's also the forward look, like, I can't speak to Concord, but I know John Valentine spends a lot of time on here, right?
yeah.
We skew as an older population, kids are out of the educational system, we're staying at home, all the things we talk about, but that does come to an end. There's a point in time when those houses turn over.
Right.
And families move in. So
Yep.
there is some model that he has that
I feel like
maybe in
we're,
the 2040s, we'll start to, our school population will
My
start to come
neighborhood
back.
has started to turn.
Yeah.
No
yeah,
question.
well, I'm on, yeah, ours, when I moved here, ours was, I was the start of a turn, and now I feel like we're getting back to coming up on it. But I know the school, I think they're projecting, at least right now, a fairly stable
For a while.
enrollment, yeah. Certainly not back to the 800 level that.
No,
we
and they
saw.
couldn't, and the
In the
interesting,
elementary school.
Yeah, K
Yeah.
through 8, yeah.
Yeah.
we built that school at that time, projecting it to manage 800-plus
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
And,
We're still out of space.
yeah, because the model of teaching has
It's
changed.
changed,
Much
right.
more
It's not that
small
the-
spaces, they
'Cause
don't
what's
have
all-
enough classrooms.
What's our current school population at the elementary? at
No,
CPS?
it's around, it's plus or minus 600 in that.
Yeah, so
range.
it hasn't really
been around.
gone up.
Gone- no, it hasn't,
You're
so-
saying the
well, that's
way
why
we're
our-
teaching, and also COVID had a big impact there, but yeah, but we're teaching differently.
We're teaching differently. We have a
Yeah.
lot of special, and,
More
special
IEPs.
education
Right,
requires
right.
little spaces with teams,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
Yep.
it's a challenge.
yeah.
So
yeah.
you're proposing significant impacts on the tax bill in a lot of your discussions, buildings, et cetera. So I did want to show you,
Who's proposing?
you've asked me to model some significant things.
Models again.
So,
Me, I didn't do it.
one of the controls that's talked about a lot that I'd like to just go over with you as part of this planning session is the so-called school building debt. So this is carried in the Concord Carlisle budget. And
You're talking about the Concord Carlisle School Building, not the Spalding?
correct, Concord Carlisle.
The high school.
So
High school, okay.
the school assessment represents the debt that's charged to us by the Concord Carlisle
Right.
School. It is declining over the next 10 to 15 years in the
Yep.
way that John Valentine talks about a lot. So as the
Right.
school projects come down, you're gonna replace that debt.
Right.
So in the assessment, though, when we talk about the school assessment, often the operating and the debt is put together.
Yep.
And you're given a number increase that is one number, not two. So if the number increase is 3.5% and it's including the decline in the school debt, then you're not capturing that
Right.
capacity that's
Ah,
coming back
yeah.
year to year.
That's right.
Yeah,
So this is something to monitor. Now, that's a 10-year-old building. As it ages over the
So
next
you're
15
saying you're not,
years.
already
you're not,
10 years, really?
we're not
You're about to burst
capturing,
pipe?
we're not capturing that because we consider it all in an operating
Gotta-
expense.
Gotta account for it.
Giant.
Is there a way we can separate? It's not our building.
It is separated, but. when
By
you
them,
talk-
but not by us,
It-
right?
Well, when we get the assessment, and it was talked about last year, they said, well, it's only a 3% increase. But the operating side was actually
No, but-
3.74. It was the debt that brought
Right,
it
the
down.
debt's
Brought it
offset.
down.
Right, but I'm asking a different question. I'm saying we take whatever bill we get and we say that's an operating expense. Could we take that bill, disaggregate it, and say, this piece is a debt piece and this piece is a...
Actually, I
So
think
it
that
does
was,
come that way.
the two select boards, Concord and Carlisle Select Board, had gotten together, and the two FinComs, and we did say that for this year, we were going to try to make it very clear to the
Disaggregate it.
schools that we want everything disaggregated, because
Okay.
when we when the FinComs were to set a guideline,
Yeah.
it meant for the operating budget.
Right, okay, so that's a good point. So do both those numbers, the disaggregated, 922 and whatever the school side is, they each are ratioed by the assessment ratio? The debt is also, right?
Yep.
And don't forget, that also includes OPEB and health insurance.
Yeah, but that is on the operating side. wouldn't you say?
OPEB is
They make a
Yeah, but they
decision.
like,
They make the decision.
and I think that's fully funded at this point, too.
So when they describe it, Concord
Yeah.
It
makes
was
it.
close.
I think 4 more years, it was pretty heavily funded so that
So
the
you're saying that assessment will go, that piece of
OPEB.
it
I don't know.
should go down.
There's a lot of different, I mean, it's not
That's
just.
how much they put E and D, right? They model in E and D an amount, like 5%.
So this is, I mean, I do believe that school capital impacts educational outcomes. OPEB is definitely something that needs to be captured, but it is not tied necessarily to educational outcomes.
Right.
So as you're assessing the overall impact of taxes for the next 15 years, I do think these are two buckets that you need to consider. So this is enough capacity in this debt school assessment to cover the police station project in terms of impact on taxes. However, the schools are also going to need to borrow debt, as you saw last year during the school amenities building discussion,
Right.
which would have added $2 million in debt to them,
Of which we get 500,000.
which we'd get 500,000. So it would eat into
Right,
this capacity.
Right.
So
And the school picture from our side, you have that one modeled? The Spalding?
that's included in our debt.
I know, but how much, like, that ought to be pretty well on the
I'll show you that
downside.
when debt declines. So it's in our debt side.
Yeah.
what's the sense of, I mean, Concord's taking on a new expensive middle school program.
Shouldn't, I mean, they shouldn't.
That doesn't.
No, but I mean, for the Concord's
Yes.
willingness to,
Yeah.
And
it
Concord
may
is,
impact their willingness to fund new capital
This
projects.
is okay, right?
Right, no, that's my point, is do we have a sense of, it's something to
You
keep
have
an
a
eye
sense,
on?
'cause
Yeah,
didn't they reject the amenities, or they pulled it?
Concord made it clear to the schools that they had a lot of deferred maintenance on all the rest of the municipal buildings because of this high school
Yeah.
thing, and that they were trying to wait patiently, and that they were not going to be looking very favorably on taking on new debt for the school before they had a chance to
As we are, right.
yeah.
address some of their maintenance problems that they had.
I think they'll, yeah, my hope is that doing the middle school project takes some of the Concord desire for new capital projects that may not be as high a priority.
Yeah, well, the school committee is an entity unto itself.
I'm not-
Has other ideas.
I'm not on the policy side, but these are your decisions. But I do think that these priorities that you have in terms of buildings, tax growth, and they need to be communicated to Concord and the schools so that the Carlisle advocacy is not just we want to spend less, but here's what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
Exactly.
Because when that was brought up to this, and during last year's discussions, there was some sympathy from the side saying, are you taking on these building projects, this tax
Are we,
impact?
are we re-upping the chairs meeting, or where we go down there? We talked about that, right?
Well, the
Do
monthly.
you get a notification of the chairs meeting? Because they do monthly in Concord.
I have not received that since
Ooh.
being chair.
You should
Yeah,
Okay.
we can travel up there.
remind Carrie, is that her name? Carrie?
Yeah, and even if you were not, I would certainly reach out to the chair of the Concord Select Board and see, have even talked with them.
They should invite chair and vice chair.
Yeah,
They should invite you.
and the chair, I think that the chair of the FinCom and you should also reach out to the chair of the Concord FinCom as well. And we had a little, I think it would be good for you guys to talk and strategize together and present. I mean, the whole idea last year was to set up the scaffolding and put the school on notice that there was going to be a unified front on both towns' part, that the guideline was going to be the guideline for the operating budget, and it was going to be the same guideline from both towns, and, so I think that's already set up, the scene is set, but you got to follow through now and get it
They
done.
didn't even invite, usually don't we get an invitation to townhouse for that? It's usually late September, that whole school thing. Do they still do that?
That I
They
don't
would
know.
have a kickoff meeting on the whole budgeting process? I don't recall seeing anything.
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah. Anyway, talk to the chair.
I will.
Who's the regional rep this year? For the-
Isn't it Sharon Witt?
Who is the the regional rep, our region?
Liaison?
I am.
Oh,
Have you
Scott is.
reached out, is Sharon also chair? No.
Oh, yeah, Sharon is chair of the.
Sharon is chair, but
Is that the region and the
Sarah
local?
the
No.
regional?
Sarah's, yeah.
No, local is Sharon.
No, Julia's
Julia.
Julie.
Okay.
Yeah,
is chair of the region.
No,
Oh, she's,
Sharon Witt is the chair of the region.
Yeah.
Julie
is the chair of the local.
V is chair of the local.
Oh, okay, well, all right. Well, then reach out, I guess, reach out
Yep.
to Sharon, yeah. Okay.
All right, so there's going to be more questions, I'm sure, and this does overlap, but I wanted to get into the capital side, and then just a review of what you did last year for budget goals. And we have time, so please ask questions and stop me. Well, whether you want the time or not, it's really up to you. Okay, so the capital planning model looks at the capital side of the budget to include some debt considerations and reserve, which is why I'm going to combine all of it into one model next year, but building out the model in pieces and understanding how you want it to work. So this was a heavily vetted process. David was involved in it, so was Mark, and who else came? Mark and James came to a working group where I was working with departments to go through the capital and try to capture changes to this capital planning model. We do have a version that will go into the budget process, so this isn't prescriptive, it is a plan. It does consider town reserves, debt levels and capacity, and then I do get into some building modeling, which I'm sure you'll have a ton of questions about. So overall assumptions is that first line right there, that will limit the operating budget to 3% tax increase. So that is just one line in this thing, and it obviously had a whole presentation on its own. That you will continue to maintain a 12% reserve, that you're going to prioritize free cash generation, that you're going to maintain current debt levels,
The
and
12% reserve. So back in my day, the target range for ideal reserve was 10 to 12%. And somewhere along the way, 12% became the minimum. And I would just question if 12% is the right number there, or if we should be at 10%.
I mean, we're kind of told the rating agencies like it, 12, is what I heard. But
Well, we
certainly challenge it.
I would just second what Scott's saying, though.
All I know is,
It's always been 10 to 12.
it's,
is
yeah,
what's
and
been
it,
discussed.
somewhere along the way, it became, you got to maintain 12 when it was 10 to
Again, I
12.
think that feedback, we should ask,
It sounds like a little bit, but it's
are we meeting with the bond? Do we have some meeting with
that's OPEB.
bond? We were talking to the OPEB guys, yeah, but what about, do they know what the bond people think, what the rating agencies think?
Yeah, we can certainly ask them.
Yeah, my sense is that we've been encouraged to go to 12, let's put it that way. Now, did we challenge it? Maybe not.
I just remember it said ideal is 10 to 12%, and we've come in above that, and somewhere along the way it
They don't
became.
give you extra credit for too much, I think.
Right, well, yeah, so I would just want to confirm that number, and if it's 10%, like, should it be 12%, or are we now keeping a little too much in reserve?
So let's do some.
face of all these other
On a
challenges.
$40 million budget, 1% is 400K.
Yeah.
So we could free up 800K. It's a good amount of money.
If,
Well, you get once, you do once.
oh, yeah,
Right.
but we should
It's
just,
fair, no, it's a fair statement. It's a fair statement.
And you guys are right on, the finance committee is talking about the same thing, so how to offset future capital costs with potential reserves.
Right.
So this assumes that you want to continue your policy of
Right.
12%.
I don't know, is that a policy?
It's in the financial reserve policy, yes.
Can you, wait, wasn't there a fourth thing on your list? Oh, maintain, okay, you didn't mean to go forward. Okay.
this policy last year.
I'll show you where the contingency is. It's just a simple escalator to account for unknowns. We went through each department. We asked them to identify things not in their operating budget over 5,000. That is certainly a talking point as well. Capital is typically defined by X dollar amount and X useful life, whether you want to set that at 5 or 10K. The reason why smaller towns tend to have smaller numbers is because operating budgets aren't as flexible to account for things such as $10,000, $15,000 expenses unless it's been intentionally put there. I like to recommend that you pull it out because you have more control over it if it's not baked into the operating
Yeah.
budget.
You have visibility, because they have to
Yeah.
ask for the specific dump truck, or, well, that's a big ticket, but, you know, a lawnmower, like a tractor.
The police haven't done this, and it's, I'm just trying to give an illustration, hyperbolic in some ways, but if they fund their cruiser in their operating budget at the end of the year, they say overtime created a bubble, you would use that payment. You don't have as much control over that capital cost.
So you're saying currently, the 5,000 is baked in?
No, it's
No.
pulled out.
It's been pulled out?
Anything
That's
over.
our threshold, minimum threshold.
But like you know, the expense side and the town administrator's office, the town treasurer's office, like, we can't afford a $5,000 piece of software without coming to you, right? You're really worried about the DPW, police, and fire with these
Right.
big costs.
Yeah. And you have the other flip side, like, as you guys remember, the computer policy, like at the schools used to be, it was its own little, like, small cap site, and one of these is only, you know, $1,200 or $1,000, but, you know, there's lots of them. But you don't do it that way. So now it becomes, now it's almost a disposable, right? It has a 3-year life, and it's gone, so it's part of the operating budget.
Okay, just a quick legend for you. So items in red have been removed from the plan, items in yellow have moved or changed, and items in green have been added. So I'm going to take you into the plan. We could certainly spend time debating a mower or not a mower. I really want to get to the higher level stuff, but I do want to show you the actual plan so you're not surprised when you see it.
We did shake them down.
And again, this is a projection and plan and model, is not a budget, so you have time to vet any of these requests. So you can see there's a lot of price updating and movement and new things. So the school did a lot of adjusting of their costs as they continue to modify their capital plan. I think there's much more fidelity in their plan now. And as Stephen gets more comfortable digging into the buildings, he's discovering things that are necessary and things that can wait. Okay, so that represents some of those changes. The wastewater treatment facility is really a year-to-year repair. We have a 15-year repair plan that's 1.5 million, which is why it's being divvied out at 100.
But wasn't there's some talk of decommissioning? You think that's?
I have been asked by the MFC to look into decommissioning the wastewater treatment plant. Huge conversation for another day.
You've been asked by whom?
To present information
MFC.
about decommissioning.
Oh, the MFC, okay.
In favor of a septic system, but there's a lot of politics there, and there's a lot of health considerations, et cetera. Okay, so just moving down, again, with your new DPW director and uncovering services versus equipment needs, he's adjusted his plan. I feel much more comfortable with Jim's grasp of the future of the project needs. Another important note here, the truck that you purchased 2 years ago, we still haven't received. You remember that from the fire department. And new diesel requirements or environmental requirements on diesels means we probably won't see another truck for 2 to 3 years. And that's not us, that's the state.
But you only pay for it, you authorize it when you want it, but you pay for it when you get it.
Get it.
And where's that money? At the authorization or at the?
So this is, we think we're going to authorize a truck the following year.
Right, but you won't actually pay the cash money for 2 years beyond that?
So if we authorize it for FY '28, we would spend it in, so this would be 27's annual town meeting, authorizing it for the fall of '28, hoping it's delivered within a year.
Okay, but let's say it goes 2 years like it's going. The cash actually doesn't leave us till we
Right.
get.
It stays in a
Right.
holding account. Road maintenance is a whole thing, I'll get into that, but this is part of the discussions that we've had and at this board, and we talked about it with our working group, and Jim went over, and I went over a draft 5-year plan that has not been finalized, but it is represented here. A lot of the fire asks can be covered by the ambulance reserve fund, which is good. It's another reserve fund we have from ambulance receipts that allows us to pay for things that are related to the ambulance. And other fire costs, like building upgrades, have been removed as you consider a new renovation. If you didn't, then a lot of the building costs that are there would come back in terms of 1 and 2 things. Cyclical cruisers, other items as identified by the Chief Amendola, excuse me. A lot of the recreation items are covered by potential CPA requests, so we will scrub this whole plan for things like CPA and state and federal grants to try and reduce these costs. That's not reflected in here unless we know for sure that funding is available. And then I do want to call your attention to this one because it's going to be coming up. We talked about it a little bit. So the elevators, which were once 100,000 or 200,000 apiece, we had a design and construction documents done, and they're ranging somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 per elevator. We can reduce the cost of that to $1 million or less if we do them all together. So it's gonna come to you from the MFC as a warrant article for a debt project for $1 million in the 3 elevators we have at this annual town meeting. So that's why it's in there. It will be covered by debt, which I'll model for you in the presentation. So I don't really want to get into the nitty gritty, but are there any questions about this process or how we built this document? And I'll give it to you so you can play with it.
So red is stuff you took out.
Yeah, but
Right.
like the elevator for the library, it got out here and then put back down there, but
Right.
see,
Yeah.
what you just explained.
And the,
Brick building is being paid for by rec, and it's being done now. The vests for the police it's all grant funded.
Right, so this, yeah, obviously, there's different revenue sources for a number
Well,
of
that's
these.
below, though. I mean, he's not,
I haven't
Right,
got
yeah.
I think red means it got taken out of its
Right, yeah,
spot.
but this isn't necessarily,
Net is something else entirely. Then you have to go to below the line, and he shows
and
this.
these haven't gone through the budget process, so taken out doesn't mean it's
No,
paid to complete.
One thing that came up at FinCom, though, was did you put culverts in?
Not yet.
another.
So the culvert assessment's being done right now. Okay, moving back into the show.
But you cut the punchline there, right?
No, that's the next one. You guys like to know where things come from.
How
so-
much does it cost, right?
All right, so this is the plan in PowerPoint form.
Or how do we fund it?
Okay, so the funding model and some options. So always recommend using one-time funds for capital projects and not rolling big projects into the operating budget. Recommend using debt for larger project, that's fairly obvious. And then the funding sources, so just some notes on that. So free cash requires an annual generation. We talked about conservatism in the operating budget equaling less buying power on the capital side. Debt obviously impacts your operational budget. Chapter 90 is relying on state appropriations, and other sources are not guaranteed but potentially available. So CPA would have to approve, you'd have to want to use ambulance reserve funds, and we'd have to maintain and get grant funding. ARPA is also going away, so that is no longer a gift. So this is what Dave was talking about. Here's the recommended finance strategy. So the top line is your expenses or the requests. So that's a summary of all of the requests in that spreadsheet. And then the revenues are ways that you would pay for this. So free cash is intentionally left blank because that's a budget decision. Chapter 90, I believe we'll get 400,000 next year, but that does depend on state appropriation. We've gotten it the last 2 years. We're only really quote unquote guaranteed 250, so there is a little bit of hope in that. CPA funding has to be approved by CPA, has to be available, has to make it into that funding, but the pickleball courts the rec is going to try for this year would be a good CPA candidate. Debt, $1 million for the elevator.
So before, the out years of CPA, you don't list it because we don't know. There are no projects on that list that, at this moment, that you believe would qualify for CPA?
Right.
Okay.
And then debt is, I'll model debt for you at a future slide, but we're assuming that the big projects would be controlled by debt. And that other right there, that's the ambulance receipts for the power cot and loader that the fire department's talking about. The reason why they're looking for a power cot and loader is there's a trend in larger patients that require a safer device, like a power cot, so that reduces the wear and tear on our firefighters and allows us to safely process patients. Okay, so considering,
Before you can just go back so they can absorb that balance line, right?
sorry.
I mean, I think the takeaway here, assuming those are good, numbers, which I think they are, at least for 3 years upcoming, we're in close to the $2 million of capital, and that's without the buildings.
there's no, police
These are
is,
not the buildings, right? These are
Police
the
isn't
things that go
there.
in the buildings,
none of it, okay.
right?
This is just regular capital.
Yeah.
And the biggest piece that Travis just identified that's not in here is any major culverts. We
Yeah.
know of at least 2. We do think that they're good grant candidates.
Right.
2 that would be $1 million plus. So expensive stuff.
And at a general level, the road capital, I think was around 800,000.
Yeah, and then
What exactly, is that just more paving?
So that'll be slide,
Okay.
6 slides from now.
That's a,
I mean, it goes back to the.
Teasing everybody.
Remember that
It goes
whole-
back to the.
The whole
presentation.
assessment we were given?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's
Very
coming
helpful.
from, yeah.
Right.
I thought it was 500,000 per year.
So now I'm gonna get into the,
You'll, yeah.
Well, that was to stay
Anyway,
level.
anyway.
so now I'm gonna get into the big pieces that I just kind of glossed
Yeah.
over that you're questioning. So-
Yeah, okay.
So first of all, reserves. So reserves are made up of the stabilization fund and free cash. So our balances as of June 30th for stabilization were 1.3 million. We know that interest is high this year, so that is a conservative number, but not a ton. We're looking at 12-15% interest already gained this year. So that number could grow, but not enough to cover the deficit. Free cash is just an estimate. It's on the low side, but that's what we think we're gonna certify in the next month. Which, if you calculate it through, if you're looking at a 12% reserve of a projected budget, that comes from the financial forecast, so it is high. You would need 4.413 million in reserves to meet that 12%, which gives you a free cash total of usable money of 1.268. And this is projecting capital at 1.594, which gives you a $300,000 deficit for the request in FY '26. Did I lose anybody?
Nope.
Stabilization, free cash, take out the 12%, what you're left with is about 1.2 million, and you have to fund about 1.6.
And
I'm sorry, 1.25, and you have to fund
Right.
1.6. You also have 300,000 in your capital stabilization fund. So last year you had free cash above 12%, you put it in cap stabilization for situations like this or some building project later. David pointed out the capital is a lot higher in the next 3 years than it is in 4 or 5 years. So you might want to use your stabilization to get through that hump.
Because we know more about what we have to buy now.
I promise you in 4 years.
And what we're going to
request
have
will
to
come.
buy.
Yeah, which is why we have a stabilization fund, in order to try to carve that.
Smooth it out, yeah.
smooth it
Yeah,
out a
and I
little.
mean, to Scott's point, we could, if we decided to reduce our reserve, we could meter that out as a
Yeah,
smoothing
or-
function
yeah.
as well.
Or you do raise the taxes a little, you know, you don't totally squash the hump, you might have
Right, You
to,
put a ramp in.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
We just may be at a point where we're not on the high side of, like,
Yeah, that's right.
you keep saving up for the rainy day, it's starting to rain, so, I mean, I'm not saying you just throw caution to the wind, but we have to strategically think about if there is an onus over the next few years, how do we want to attack that? Yeah.
Well, we want to, you want to, to me, it's all about the rating. I mean, whatever the,
Yeah, absolutely,
you want the good low rating, so that
Yes.
when you need to borrow, you can borrow cheapy.
absolutely.
Okay, so this is more for the public than this board. You're experienced enough to know this is how you close deficits.
Yeah.
Okay, free cash generation. I just want to emphasize that without generating free cash, you have less ammo for these capital projects. So how do you generate free cash? You're looking to project a 1% turn back from departments, which means you don't want to strangle them with their budget. However, you do need to, reduce the budget to a reasonable level. So the more conservative you are with your budget, the less free cash you generate. State aid will need to hit the numbers that we're projecting. And local receipts, you would need to limit them to about 90% of actual. Right now, we're at 83, which means we have a little cushion in our local receipts to increase our revenue estimates. However, the more you do that, the less free cash you generate. All right, debt. Let's talk about debt. So this is our current debt load on the town side without the schools is 1.28 million. We held that constant in this year's budget in order to assume future debt, and here is that future debt. So right now, debt makes up 3.64% of our budget. If you model in the costs here of these borrows from the capital plan, so 1 million for the fire truck, which has already been approved, 1 million for the elevators, which we talked about, 1.1 for the town hall roof, dispatch radios, and school HVAC, and 750 for a DPW fuel pump, which actually services the whole town, so DPW is misleading. All right, so that's just a light 4 million in borrowing. You see the debt as a percent of the budget, or the total budget impact stays fairly constant, and doesn't go crazy, which would impact your operating budget. So the moral of the story is you can afford to borrow for the things you need, but you probably cannot squeeze a building project into this debt load unless you significantly increase it as a percentage of the budget, which means you're gonna cut services somewhere else, which is an acceptable decision. I just want you to know the implications of that. But on the other side, you see it starting to decline again for either future projects or if you wanted to weather a storm and model it so
Well,
that.
again, it's without buildings, so
Yeah,
it's part of this.
Right.
And that's
There's something
for-
else that we
There's
know is
some hands
coming
you're gonna
up.
start it all over.
Yeah.
Or culverts.
Yeah.
They don't get paid for by grants, right? Or really anything.
That is a lot of borrowing, but these are going to be coming to you as projects that need to be done, not want to be done.
Yeah. but-
Something like the town hall roof, we talked about this in capital, right now it's scheduled for FY '27. Could it last until FY '29? I think the consensus was sure. Will it last till FY '32? Probably not. At some point, you'll have to do it, so you can shift it around if you need to. But it's not something that you can just ignore forever. The RTU also needs to be done, so the timing of these projects is also important. So the RTU is definitely not gonna last that long, but the roof might, so you're gonna have to figure out if you wanna.
Wait, what's the RTU?
Rooftop unit.
Ah,
And as I recall from, 4 years ago when we were looking at this and trying to, the MFC, when I was still on the MFC, we decided it was really important to do both at the same time because since the rooftop unit sits on a roof, you don't want to put the rooftop
Right.
unit on, then have to
And then
take
have
it
to
back
do
off in order to do the
So are
roofing.
they both at end of life then?
Well, yeah,
RTU more so
basically.
than the roof. So the roof might last, but then you would be redoing the
right.
project.
So
and it would be more
it
expensive.
pushes the roof up on
Yeah.
And I think
Priorities.
the high-level point, too, I want to make is that we are digging out of a hole in terms of deferred maintenance and underinvestment in our buildings and infrastructure that, I don't know how far back it goes, but it goes back a long way. So this is not us trying to build gilded buildings and all this. It's trying to catch up on deferred maintenance and prevent extremely expensive
Right.
failure.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
this type of, the investment in this deferred maintenance is critical, not only because it needs to be done, but if we don't do it, we're going to have larger, unpredictable expenses down the road that you can't plan for.
So, right, so I think to build on that point, when we think strategically about what does the town have to provide, what do we need to provide our citizens, and what is nice to provide, right? And Tim Hull, I was on a task force with Tim many, many years ago, and we kind of looking at that, and they called it bending the curve. We were trying to bend the operating curve, which we failed at that, obviously. But security, we go back now, the master plan. So, like, we can't have our buildings dangerous, elevators that don't work, culverts that fail,
Collapse, yeah.
There's a bunch of things that we have to say, to your point, we've got to do those things. I mean, another way to look at the budget, because we tend to look at it and sort of subtract,
Yeah.
but I think we should do an additive exercise. I mean, you could call it zero-based budgeting. I think that's kind of misleading, but, we should lay a foundation of things we do that we have to do, like protect our citizens, fire, police, dispatch, council on, aging services for that part of the population, and those infrastructural things, and, so forth. And then there's a layer that's sort of, I mean, I'm just making it up as I go along, but like schools. I mean, of course, we have to educate our kids. The question is to what degree. And then on top, above that, honestly, there's a lot of stuff that we do here that, yeah, we do it because I think it's a good thing to do, or we do, but it may not be mission critical. It just may not be mission critical. And, I think we got to think hard about how we stack that up.
Yep.
All right, a couple more huge decisions for you to think about. Okay, here is
It's like a train wreck.
here's the debt line. Thought it would be fun to throw some color into this presentation.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the debt line. So in order
The
to
little
accomplish,
dotted line, or the.
that's the
solid
trend line, and the debt line is the solid blue line.
line. Okay.
So there is a little spike that you'll have to deal with in order to cover the 4 million, but then it starts to decline again.
Because
And
the buildings are powering it down, the old buildings.
The old buildings are coming off.
Right.
And the equipment are the The various things that were on that list.
that I just talked about. Yep,
Yeah.
fire truck, the elevator, the
Yeah.
town hall stuff.
Yeah,
I don't mean to minimize it, the town hall equipment and the fuel pumps.
yep. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna get into each one of these capital considerations, and then that's the end. So your fire truck fleet is aging. The 15-year horizon has replacing a couple of those things, and as you know, they're very expensive. So, $2 to $4 million in fire trucks coming in a 15-year horizon, which does match that debt trend line, but again, doesn't allow for absorption of building projects. I keep saying that on purpose. All right, your major renovations in building projects, and I do have a model for this to show you as well. So, what, 21.5 million in building costs, okay, which is just a number that I chose out of conversations that you've had that means nothing if you don't make actual decisions. Equals about 1.76 million annually in excluded debt. So if you assume a 30-year borrow at 5%, if you assume 30-year borrow at 5%, it's 1.76 million. Okay, so the tax impact, and I just picked 1.8 million, is 881 per average household at its peak, and then it declines. Okay, so that's on top of what we've modeled with the police station and the operating budget.
So
I mean, sorry,
881
that does
of,
include the police station.
so on a
It does, it
20,000,
It does, yeah.
It does.
on a
That's his role of
$20,000
police,
tax
fire,
bill,
and
that's
something else.
about a 5%, close to 5% increase
I don't know if
on the
that's
average
five.
tax bill.
The 881?
He does?
No, I don't
So,
think
and I'm bringing up John because he's here a lot and he talks about like big picture with these things. So that $20 million number intentionally comes from the master plan and conversations you've had, and that does include the decline of the town buildings, the decline of the school buildings without replacing those with anything. I'm showing you on the town side, we have to replace it with a lot of stuff. On the school side, to be determined, but that capacity has been or will be eaten away, which would not allow for new building projects without a tax increase. How big that tax increase is up to many different levers. And then road maintenance, which we'll quickly get into. So here is the tax projection for that discussion I just talked about. So just taking, and I know there's other buildings out there, and I'm not picking favorites, I'm just talking about costs, so you can see it. It's a model, it's not a policy decision. So the police building, the fire, and the DPW, which are things that the town has to provide, and I think will eventually come.
so is there a missing column of the year, or what?
Yes, so this is just a model of the cost when they start.
Right, but if you say police is, I don't know, next year, then 2 years after that is fire, and the year after that is DPW.
You should have had one more column, the
And that could move.
years.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to.
Well, you could say T+2. I mean, all I'm saying is, we already have the police station on the books, so after you do the bond, what's the interim bond, the construction bond, whatever, this kicks in the year after that, right? So is that like
We're saying
28?
26, 27?
27. So if line 1 is 27, that's
27.
just to calibrate. 28, 29 is fire, and 30 is DPW.
So at its peak, you'll see 881 added to the so-called 3% target you have each year, declining over time. And if you don't do something to reduce the impact or gather capacity, then that would be the cost.
So Scott, our newest member, don't go for a third term.
So what I want to talk about here is, I talk a lot about,
What's the date on that?
29, roll off in 29.
Start looking at properties and
100 years from the stock market crash.
I
It's a
talk,
perfect time.
it's basically another year of taxes, these building projects, another year and a half of taxes. I just want to quickly talk about legislative priorities. I talk a lot about the municipal building authority and adding a funding mechanism from the state that would defer some of these costs. This is why. So even in Carlisle, that has some wealth and some ability to pay, these challenges are not, they're not doable. So if you do want to keep a DPW that's functional and safe for your employees and provides the services, that might get squeezed out here because of its priority level. You need some help, and the state should be providing that. Everybody knows it, every small town talks about it, and that's why that's one of my biggest legislative priorities, because this isn't a Carlisle problem, this is a Massachusetts problem.
Right, but if you back out, so 21.5, 3.5 of that is fire, right? I mean, police, excuse me.
Yeah.
So that leaves you 18. The DPW estimate is,
We haven't gotten there. yet.
Unknown.
no, somehow.
I'm
the-
saying
low.
6.
6?
I'm saying 6.
So you're saying 12 and 6, right? 12 and 6. So we're about to embark on a,
12 for fire, 6 for DPW.
yeah, we're going on a conceptual journey.
And those aren't big numbers, by the way, like.
We
in
are,
terms of-
not.
the MFC is
Sound
going
like
to
a lot,
come
but-
forward with something.
Not
for
really, yeah.
For fire?
Numbers
Yeah.
on the
both of them?
DPW.
On DPW.
In November, you'll
Fire,
get
we're
the
gonna-
DPW.
Fire,
We're working on
Fire
it,
station would be
so we're going to get
25.
to that budget,
right. And that leaves
or
poor
OPM.
COHS/community,
For the DPW.
you know,
What about the Highland Building?
That's why we're having this discussion, is to
solution
think
in search
about,
of a problem.
Right.
right. No, this is kind of trying to big picture, put everything in perspective, so that we as a board and the town can think about, well, what priorities.
Right, what
Well,
do
we-
right.
Well, what is our role, like, what is the role of town government? What services do
Right.
we need to
Well, that's what we're saying,
provide? Do
right.
we want to, yeah, to your point, earlier point, there's this
And, you know,
hierarchy.
we
of-
haven't raised it in a while, but
Yeah.
the regionalization word should be part of the conversation.
I will add
We are,
another.
again, surrounded by 5 extreme, much larger, well-managed towns that do a lot of services pretty well, and probably could incrementally add some things. You know, not, I get it, not, you know, police, not schools, blah, 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 but, you know, there are things that could be added that they could probably absorb for us. That would, might not be cheaper in the operating line, but might in aggregate be more cost-effective.
It's a thought, but I think it's good that we're planning
Yeah, no,
all
we
of
should
this
plan it out,
now,
right,
and that would
yeah.
be a benefit down the road if we.
Yeah.
Can I add another just general topic that I think at some point we have a responsibility to at least put forward to the town to either affirm or reconsider is the CPA surcharge?
Yeah.
Because again,
What
it's,
percent is, yeah, I was wondering,
2%.
and it, again,
percent of the tax
the
bill.
town has affirmed it, but I think in the context of all of this discussion,
So a $20,000 tax bill, which is where we're angling,
it's capped at a certain,
it's $400? Is it that? Is it
Yes.
around four?
No,
Yeah, is there
CPA is,
max that you can pay?
I'd be guessing, but
no,
it's,
there is a cap. It doesn't, it's not
Yeah.
on the entirety of your.
So it's not the whole thing.
No, but
But if we're talking about a building project, it might be the
No, I-
difference
I-
between, if a police station's 160,
I just bring it up as it's it's not part of the budget, it's its
Right.
own thing, and I think as for the taxpayers, as we're laying out, at some point this year or
Right.
next year, we're
All
laying
the
out all
costs.
these things,
Yeah.
they should at least, you're in it till you're not in it, so you should periodically just put it forward to affirm,
right.
as we've done in the past, or maybe the town looks at
What's
this.
the typical match at this point? Darlene?
It's not great. It was 17%
Of
this
course,
year.
where else are you going to get 17% on your money?
But it's restricted how you can
The
use
thing
those
is,
funds.
I think what's important, the important calculation would be, because we're using CPA funds for things, so what would the difference be if
Right.
you, because you'd have to raise that amount of money in taxes, and you would not, and
But they
17%
can't
more.
take away what you've already.
Already have.
Right.
And an option is also to lower it to 1%. That doesn't mean it has to be 0.
That's true, but I think we do need to
I just think
look at it
it's
carefully.
part of the residents' tax
Well, I
bill.
think you got a clue from
It's good to
Brian's-
just
A lot of people
periodically
don't
don't know it,
remember
and
that. Yeah.
it's just something that I think is good policy, the town should just
Yeah.
affirm every however many years.
Well, I think you have a window, if Ryan's, he showed it in one of the slides, there were 3 years of CPA usage, and then there was nothing. And I asked him the question, there were no projects on the projection list?
Well, the
That-
bog, I mean, but there
Yeah,
are
but there
plenty
will
of
always be-
possibilities. Yeah.
And-
And some
and-
of them are going to be big ticket.
So are you guys doing that long-range sort of modeling, or not
We're-
modeling, but at
We're
least?
trying. We're
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah.
We're not as far along, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say conservation, CONSCOM, has a lot of budgetary needs that if they weren't being taken care of in CPA, would have to be taken care of by our operating budget, and that would cost us 17% more.
But again, it's a modeling, to Scott's point, a modeling exercise of all that,
It's all the same.
and what's the appropriate
No, it
replenishment?
costs the
number might be
taxpayers
less than
more.
maximum.
It would cost the taxpayers more. ultimately than the 2% they're paying on it now.
But those projects that are approved for CPA funds, if we did the prioritization and they were part of the budget, we probably wouldn't do some of them.
Well,
my
then
point.
that becomes deferred maintenance and possibly, and I don't know.
I think
We'd have to look
I
at
like, I think my recommendation is that you have input from your committee on the projects, and then we can ask Conscom, and we can model what the spend curve looks like compared with our balances, which are pretty healthy right now. And maybe the solution is like a 1%.
Okay.
Maybe we dial that.
And again, I'm not saying for or against, I'm just saying is if we're having this big discussion
Yeah.
and we're showing people the tax things over time, I think it's good to remind people that there is a surcharge that the town has opted into that we will be in unless there's a vote to get out.
Right.
And it's good to just periodically,
So if we put in $100,000, the state puts in 17,000, or later when you spend the money, they give you that? How does that work?
You certify
We-
a total,
Yeah.
and then you get the match.
you get
Yeah.
it.
You get the match, not necessarily for a project.
Correct.
No,
You
yeah.
get the money in the coffers.
Yeah,
and
you get it in the
Your
coffers.
job is
Yeah.
to not spend it on the run.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I forget where it was funded, and there is some movement to fund it higher than what it's been funded, that, and to do it consistently. When we first started, it was 100% match.
100%,
Yeah, I mean, we,
That made
the
sense.
first 10
right?
years, we made a lot.
And it
Yeah.
still very much makes sense, but it's, I just don't want it
But it's
to,
always good to
Fall
reaffirm.
by the
Be a
wayside.
hidden tax that people have forgotten about.
it's not
and know
hidden,
that
it's on there, but it's,
But, yeah, people don't realize it's, well, actually, some people, it's the other way. They think every time we vote on a CPA grant, that's raising their taxes. Don't realize we already have the money, but whatever.
but it's, I think it's
Yeah,
just a
No, I
good.
get you. I want to ask one thing on this. So, Ryan, you had talked about the ability to use CPA funds to pay the interest on CPA-eligible projects, right? If we had to borrow?
So
Am I saying that right?
I would want the lawyers to weigh in, but if the Bog House was going to become a debt project, you could use CPA to pay the debt.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to take one of these big community projects off the table, then CPA, if used strategically, could be
Right.
a way to do it. But it would have to be housing, rec.
Right, fall within the
Conservation.
eligible, yeah.
So Bog House would qualify if we did it.
The Bog
If it
House
was
is the
housing.
number one community problem that CPA might be able to solve.
Yeah.
That's a big, big project.
So that's good, too. Yeah, good, all right.
But it's outside of the budget, so we don't, but it, we need to think about strategically how we utilize CPA.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
well, that's what Barney is taking the lead on.
And any
He needs to
legislative
just sit there and just,
momentum to broaden the use of CPA funds would be great too.
Well, and you know, it
that
does
has been
raise,
discussed, actually.
it raises also what we talked about not too long ago about doing more to connect with our state rep and state senator, rather, in addition to individual outreach. Like maybe it's time to have set up time for them to come back.
Yeah, and-
which they've done in the past.
Yeah.
We haven't done that in a couple of years.
I am in the process of reaching out to them on the issue of the TA bylaw, so I
Yeah.
will actually encourage them and say, hey, would you mind coming in, and maybe we just have a session where we can talk to them.
Yeah,
But I do see a potential need to communicate to the community if, say, we go down the road and we say, well, we're going to do this Bog House renovation, but we're not doing a community center. And people want to understand, well, why are you doing this but not this? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, we're using these funds here, but we can't use, I think it's part of the conversation we have with people, because I think the nuance for a lot of people of CPA versus not
is it not
is
understood?
not understood, or where the funding comes from. And I think whether it's a question we bring to the town, I think my expectation is that we'll find use for CPA funds that people will look at and say, well, why are we spending money on this, but we're not, doing this, which seems more important. And so, well, we can't do that with CPA funds, but we have these funds we can do. So I do think it'll just be part of the communication regardless.
So I don't want to leave Scott hanging, so road maintenance.
Yeah.
Here's just a very simple projection based off of the two inputs you've given Jim and I, which are to maintain the current PCI rating or around there, plus include some parity roads. So we did that, which we're going to be presenting to you in an actual plan, and this is what that plan would look like. So it's somewhere between 750 to 800,000 for the next 4 years, and then it does taper off a little bit assuming you don't want to continue to aggressively address the backlog. We expect around 400,000 a year based off recent trends in Chapter 90. You'll also know or remember that I advocate for this heavily when I talk about legislative, because I think roads matter to people and you want to do more, but all of this capital decision-making keeps you from this
Right.
type of investment, which is 400,000 a year, which would be a lot. Okay, so that's the delta. So that would need to be in the capital plan.
Why is it so high in 25, 90?
We got extra money, didn't we?
Oh, that's the excess we have
Because we weren't spending.
previous years.
Okay, so we got a one-time,
So we were able to do some good. the
that's
last
going to be
couple
huge for
years.
us this is this year, it's this year's.
So we're gonna do everything we've already contracted plus some parity roads, assuming you agree.
Yeah.
And then we get into a more
Right.
simple maintenance plan.
Yeah.
So that's why those 400,000 are in the capital plan, because of this. But you haven't approved this plan yet, and that certainly can go up and down, depending on what you need.
And just a quick thing, so before we were talking about this, am I right that we were saying 500 million a year just to
500,000.
keep us?
500 million, where's that?
Sorry. 500,000. It's
getting late.
500,000 just to sort of stay where we are, not make any
Improvements.
improvements.
And it wouldn't
so-
address the parity roads, like
Right, so
lightly
this,
trafficked roads.
this is,
This makes it more.
it's baking in more than we had talked about before, yeah,
The outlier roads, these roads that only have 6 people on them,
Yes.
we talked a lot about
yeah.
whether it's fair that they're included or not, and what service level do you need to provide, so that's what this looks like.
Yeah,
But we used to spend, zero, right?
Right.
Now,
it's another catch-up.
well, it's a catch-up, but,
We're not-
I mean, PCI parity, I agree with it, but, it could be bumpier, right? It's kind of like one of those trade-offs,
Yeah,
right? People,
I've had multiple residents comment on the paving this year, to me. I don't know if you've
I
all
have
received
too.
those
I
saying,
have
wow,
really
looks
appreci-
great, have appreciated it, right.
oh, and driving on from,
oh yeah, it's much better.
on Monument, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
All I hear are the complaints about the guardrails being
Oh,
so.
yeah.
What?
Just depends on where you
If we
live.
take guardrails out of this,
Yeah, right.
we go with like normal sized guardrails, does it cut the budget?
So I've already hit a lot of these conclusions, but maintaining this model does require careful attention to a lot of the things that you brought up, plus operating costs. And I think operating costs get lost a lot in this, because as you look at each request, each one of them makes sense. So if you don't look at them
Yeah, in whole.
in its totality, then you can't accomplish big things. Addressing future capital, I do think you know how to address deficits. The larger considerations outside of this model are the building projects, let's keep talking about. Larger investments in road maintenance, which includes those culverts, and then something that's discussed occasionally in this board is major land purchases. So that's not in this model either, which is, some of you say, can we buy this piece of land? And I always say, of course we could, but there would have to be some trade-off in this plan as well. So nothing is ever bad, it's just a trade-off.
Yeah,
Okay, I did want to show you this before, I'll talk about this all night, but I know,
You're going to send us all those slides and
Yes.
and the tools.
and again, this is not meant to be the presentation, it's
Yeah,
meant to
we
be
get
a
it.
thought-provoking conversation starter, and then you can use the model to do whatever you want with it, to say, what would happen if I did this, or what would happen
Yeah.
if I do that.
yeah.
But it's meant to start the budget process. All right, so this was sent to you last year or 2
2
years
years
ago for
ago.
budget goals.
22.
Oh, my God.
Right when you started, I guess. right?
Yep, and we talked about setting goals. So now that you've seen the full model that you've asked me to build and its implications, I'd like to go back to this. So what priorities does the board want to communicate to departments in the budget process? What directions do you want to give departments about constructing their budgets to include increasing or decreasing services, staffing levels, debt levels? Okay, and then your free cash levels, your reserve levels, and your capital spending. Your goals should address all of these points so that the finance committee knows what to do, so they know how to shape the budget for you, and your departments know what they're facing in terms of requests. So if you truly are gonna hold the operating budget to 3%, then that means a less than level services budget for the departments, unless something gives in the budget process. So that type of communication would be really important for this first draft of the budget you get. Do you want it to look like your priorities or not? The more information you input into the budget process, the better that's gonna be.
What's the timing of that? We have to do that?
So we're delivering those instructions to the departments around Halloween, so the end of this month,
So that means we got to do that like next meeting?
and you have time on the agenda for it.
Okay. I mean, I would say back to the, 3%, the comment about 3. So Prop 2.5, I think, was very cleverly designed, 40 years ago, 50 years ago?
And there's a lot of towns pushing to increase that.
Yeah, but it was designed at an era of inflation at about 2.5, and so it really was subtle, like, you just should keep pace with inflation. You
Right,
shouldn't
right.
increase what you're doing. So it's kind of in those days, it was kind of a level service mandate. And we've been fortunate in this country, like everybody's talked about it. I mean, we lived with low interest for a long time. And then suddenly prices started going up. So, yeah, I think 3% at least is the new 2.5 in terms of if your mindset is level service. But that's not the law. The law is 2.5.
Right.
So that is another strategic question for us. Are we going to go in, it builds on the other things we've been saying. Should we be looking at a just, discretionary, let's call it discretionary service budget? In other words, certain things we'll do if we can and we won't do if we can't. I don't know.
Yeah, well, in fact, the thing is, though, regardless of what our decision is, we should know what that baseline is so that we can present it to the townspeople so they understand.
Well, we got great tools now,
Yeah,
so we should be able to distill it.
yeah,
And we should, I would say this is a little bit of a segue, but, I spent a lot of time in the last few months thinking about town meeting and with the committee that we
yeah.
have. And Kate's been in a couple sessions. We're going around to the other committees now and we're socializing all this. And a lot of it, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff about, could you have it on a Sunday and get more, parents with kids and stuff. But a big chunk is, can we socialize these issues in advance to get people so they really come in more knowledgeable about it than just the 3 hours that they sit there, like to really understand and have really, even if we can, like these coffee table kind of conversations with citizens, like, what's important.
let's look at the MBTA communities
Yeah,
subcommittee.
what they're
We'll be
doing.
having an open house.
Right, exactly.
Maybe, let's take a look at the response we get to that, because I
Yeah.
think that might be
That's a
something
great
that we
forum,
should be
yeah.
thinking about.
We could do that.
We could
We
do
could hold
open
those.
houses, we could have,
Right.
we can show,
Right.
some of these
Right.
choices and the things that we're wrestling with,
Right,
so
I
that
think it's a
people,
great idea.
if nothing else, understand
Yeah.
what we've gone through to get to our recommendations.
Right,
'Cause
right.
well, we can't see who's on or not. What
That's it.
that's it?
2 reporters.
Okay, so, I mean, honestly, they have
Oh,
not
they can
seen-
help.
I know, but
But, right.
then they, anyway.
Right, we
Right,
don't
but
have
I know, I like
anybody
where that's going, and I
following
would
us except
say-
us and our staff.
I would say that because people's institutional memories, or their memories are kind of short, that, unfortunately, we have to make certain budgetary decisions like in the now time. But we really need to generate citizen interest and participation in the run-up to town meeting.
Yeah,
So that would be a time. I mean, we'll have a lot of numbers, we'll know where, yeah, getting people more engaged in this,
yeah.
I think is good, is
And
really.
it's the how. How do you
It's
get
how do you
people
do it?
engaged?
Well,
Yeah.
Got you.
you know how to get people's interest, you start,
Talking about a big
you
tax
start,
hike.
or,
Yeah.
or reducing services that
Right,
people
Right,
care
I'd
about.
say,
right.
that's okay,
Yeah.
that's okay, direction's
Yeah.
okay, right, so.
I mean, quite honestly, a lot of people aren't engaged because they're okay with how
They are
things, we do a lot of work and we hear from a lot of constituents, but a lot of this town is just, let me write the check and go on with my day. And-
Right, or you don't even write the check, it's baked
Yeah, it's
into
just,
your.
yeah, it's paid into your mortgage and
payment,
it's,
you're like, okay.
and so, again, I think part of the lack of awareness and interest is people saying things are okay, at least okay enough where I'm not
Yeah.
getting involved.
Yeah.
And so the way you get people out of that is you do something that they don't like
And they
or,
might- Yeah, right.
And it's much more, people tend to react more to something being taken away than something being added.
I think, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
But we
we'll
don't wanna
see.
cry
We'll
wolf,
see.
but on the other hand, yeah.
If I were to kind of assess if there's a consensus here, though, is that I think that, at least what I'm reading, is that we were kind of on board with many of the assumptions that have gone into this. Not
Yeah.
to say that we're not going to tweak things or whatever, but, and Scott, I see you giving a little maybe not, but.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
10 to 12%.
But I think,
Yeah.
But those are some minor changes, but I'm talking
Yeah.
about if last year, David, you pointed out, we set a 3% target.
Yeah.
And then you saying 2.5 is just too low. I tend to agree, in today's
But what-
inflationary environment.
what-
But I want to hold it down as much as we can
Yeah.
for the long term, because we'll be in such a better position.
Well, and that's exactly what Ryan's tool is telling us.
Exactly.
If you go to 3 in a Prop 2.5 world, you eventually run into your levy limit.
You do.
And you face an operational override. Plus, you're constraining your ability to do the capital projects.
Right.
But,
Right.
okay, maybe that's, that is another strategy.
And-
Say, we're gonna crash into that, line, and we're gonna deal with that
and I just know from experience that 2/3 of our budget is schools.
yeah.
And just contractual wage increases of service level
Yep.
accounts for about a 2% growth
Yep.
in the budget.
Right,
That leaves you 1% for everything else.
yeah,
And everything else is growing more than 1%.
right.
Out of district, transportation, utilities. And so
Insurance.
insurance, 3% does not get you to service level, right?
Yeah.
3% sounds
2.5 certainly doesn't.
2.5 doesn't, 3.5, 3 with some favorable wins,
Yeah,
you can kind of make it work. I don't think you can make it work for the long term, but you can get by.
right.
And I think that's the challenge, is even you could say 3%, to me, that doesn't get you to a level service budget. It means you're making some,
What are your comparable towns talking when you get together with, you're the chair of the small town or something, right? What kind of percent increases are they looking at in their operating budgets?
Honestly, 3-4 times more than what we're talking about.
3 or 4 times?
3 or 4 times? Like 12%?
So Dunstable last year went for 26%. No. But
we can do service level for that.
So the caveat to that is your taxes are considerably higher than those,
Yeah,
yeah.
than those
Yeah.
towns.
But didn't Acton just do what was their?
Yeah, and I don't want to guess what their percentage is, but it wasn't 3, it was more like 6 or 7.
Okay, but the ones who aren't hitting overrides, they're just,
There's not many towns.
there's
that
not
aren't.
many, so we're lucky because we have the cushion.
Most towns are at their levy limit. We are for everyone watching at home, both of you, all this being
Huge
said,
audience that watches later.
Carlisle's in an extremely good position. I know this all sounds like doom and gloom, but we are in a good position relative to other towns in the Commonwealth in terms of having some ability to make choices and make trade-offs. Some of them just don't have that ability.
Yep.
I'm just wanting to circle back to your point, though, and I asked the question earlier about the variables and which one has the most impact. Obviously, schools, and you say, it's 2/3 of our budget. So this is the type of presentation that needs to go to the school committee, so
Yes.
that they see
Yes.
the bigger
They
picture of the
understand.
town and the impacts that their budget has on all of us.
Yeah, that's the thing that I always say, because there's such a big thing. It's like, when you're trying to save money in the house and you turn off the lights or something instead of, I don't know, not buying a new car,
Right.
There's such a huge
Right.
impact that even if you totally cut the entire rest of the budget out, that doesn't make enough difference. They have got to do some.
Right, but they represent,
well.
School committee members run and are elected by, run often, I would say, not always, but run because they are parents. And
Yeah,
are
but they are-
representing the parents.
Well,
They
but
have
they
a-
are elected by the entire
I
town.
understand.
They
And believe
really
me,
have a.
In my 6 years in that seat, I absolutely told everybody,
They-
it's irresponsible to be parochial. You have
It's
to.
absolutely.
But they're over there, and their administrators are over there, and their missions are, what's the highest quality education we can provide our children? Very important goal. And, again, it's at the margins. I mean, they have to be willing to stress test, for example, what's been pretty sacred for a long time, which is class size.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
You know, those are things they have to challenge, and, you know, but we have to, I mean, we need to get with them, we need a joint session.
We do.
Kind of get those missions aligned.
And they need some greater understanding, motivation to want to
Yeah.
look at that stuff.
All right, I got to
Yeah.
keep us back on track here.
Yeah.
because
Well, thank
we're-
you, Ryan, that's great.
Yeah,
has been
Ryan,
a-
that was
Thank you.
terrific. A
Well,
lot there.
not only was it great, we're going to roll right into the next kind of
So
great
just-
thing.
Yeah, next
By
steps.
saying that was, I did the presentation.
Yeah.
And now I'm all dry and can't talk, but the work was done by Kelly, the staff, and the working group certainly informed a lot of the assumptions and everything, so the model was built by a team, for sure.
So
Yeah.
if you put in a capital item for a money printing machine, I think we would,
Is this a presentation worth giving to the school committee?
a version of it, I think.
Yeah.
I always think that, connecting people to the bigger plan helps.
So maybe you and I can discuss, because we're just they're kicking off the budget process, right? And so I think distilling some of this down to a digestible
Right.
overview, I think would be helpful. And we can get on a school committee agenda and just give them kind of a similar, a distilled down version of what we just went through.
Yeah,
And I think that would be helpful for
I think it
them.
would be.
Yeah, I
And
do.
a
It would be
joint-
helpful for
and a
them.
joint meeting.
I think it would be helpful for the administration, everyone
Yeah.
involved.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we'll work towards that. We do need to move on, so we're going to move to the town administrator evaluation. This is the public evaluation of the town administrator, and it was published in the packet, but I do want to quickly go through that for everyone's benefit, and then have everyone can take a brief moment if you wanted to share any comments that were published here or anything else. And then the TA and the select board need to talk about the TA's goals for going forward. So this performance evaluation was part of our plan to really standardize this. This is an evaluation that's used by other members of the, or other staff members in the town. It's just been tailored a little bit toward the town administrator. We went through this. It was submitted to each member. Each member filled it out individually. There are definitions of your rankings of outstanding. 4 would be exceeds expectations. 3 would be successful, meets expectations. 2 needs improvement, or 1 is unsatisfactory. And we're trying to standardize this evaluation. We went through it included the town administrator's own self-evaluation and assessment of the performance goals, the level of achievement, as well as a final assessment of the uniform performance criteria. The final evaluation included the average score in each category. All that information was sent to me, and I compiled it into this letter that is the official town administrator performance evaluation. As you can see in there, by the overall performance average in the leadership category, the 4.6, the attitude, judgment, dependability, and creativity, 4.8, resident customer service, 4.8, communication skills, 4.6, job knowledge, ability to learn new skills, 4.6, and goals, 4.6, for a subtotal of 28. We had 6 of these criteria, and remember, we came up with these criteria of what we think is important in our town administrator, as well as in our town staff. And the overall average ranking is 4.7 out of a 5. And in summary, I put this in the last paragraph. The chair would like to express the select board's sincere appreciation for the excellent overall performance of our town administrator, Ryan McLean. As the overall score of 4.7 out of 5 indicates, Ryan is a top performer and is well respected by the select board. He objectively exhibits top marks in the qualities that the select board seeks to measure, and he holds himself to the high standards of achievement. Ryan not only has the technical skills of a highly qualified administrator, but also possesses the essential interpersonal skills needed to succeed in the role of town administrator. We are grateful for his continued service to our town. So that is the official evaluation. We did meet with you individually, each of us, and there were comments that I had included in here as they were provided to me verbatim. So if anyone wants to make additional comments, I think this was well done and I think well received.
I agree.
Anyone else have anything to say? Otherwise, we will move on to talking about his goals for the next year.
I just encourage, since this is a public document now, I do encourage people to read our comments. I don't want to redo them
Right.
right now. I just also would like to
Where does
compliment.
it live? Where would people find
Yeah.
it?
It is in the meeting packet. I did see that there's a
It's not-
mosquito reporter on the call. Maybe it
Well, I
will.
mean, people can always probe the depths of the meeting packet to find nuggets, but
Yeah.
should we,
Is this on the
should we have it
website
on a
under
site
the
like-
TA? Do you want to put it under the TA? The Select board. But it
It
should
would
be
be good
known.
to have it get made public. I mean, you know, we always see something about the school superintendent's evaluation, and that gets described in the mosquito. I don't know where else that lives.
well,
but-
we could be on our select, I mean, this is a different conversation I don't have tonight, but we have a spot in the website. We could redesign our area of the
Oh, like a
website.
select board
Yeah, the
spot?
select board
Yeah, I
could
mean, all
have-
we have, here are the
Yeah,
minutes, you
yeah,
gotta
you're
read all
right.
the minutes, you
You're
gotta know
right.
which minutes to read, I mean.
Yes.
I think we have the control to design that part of the
do.
website
That's
We do.
true.
and put things we wanna highlight, and maybe we should take that on at
Yeah.
some
Well,
point as a
yeah.
project.
If everyone wants to, as a board, have that published, I'm sure that we could have that staff publish that
I
on the
would
website.
like to see that published.
Yeah.
I would too.
Okay.
Great.
Robert, you know where you'd put it?
Do like a,
Our contract.
can we do like a
negotiations
restaurant?
are
Can we just
coming.
put a little sign in the window that says?
Yeah.
A,
No, I think it's. it
Well, and
speaks
I hope you know, understand that we are very happy with your work here for our town.
Yeah.
And that your evaluation reflects that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's going to, you know, as I said briefly in mine, but, and when you think about the impact, well, it's really about, you know, making our town work more effectively, work better, having residents feel better about how town government works. You know, all of those things are, you have a direct impact on that, and that's very
Yeah.
important.
Thank you. So just briefly, I would just like to say that I am the face of a team, and the team supports me very well. They cover up a lot of my many weaknesses with their skills, and I think that's the point of assembling a good team. So
Right.
I think the comments that you're making and the conversations I've had with you, I was thinking a lot about the staff and what the work they did that enabled some of those comments and conversations and the stuff that we've moved forward. So I just want to make sure I say that. Also, when I interviewed, I said I thought that I would be a good fit for this town, and I think it's because of the volunteerism here, the willingness of the people to engage, to include yourselves, and the idea that staff is looking to get some stuff done. A lot of people are really surprised by how much Carlisle does, how active we are for a small town, and it's an incredible honor to work here and to lead this. It's extremely challenging and rewarding. But I'm very excited about the future, and what I'm taking from your evaluation is to keep going and to try to accomplish these many important goals that are just a good model for small towns everywhere. You know, so thank you for the opportunity, thank you for the kind words, and we got a lot to do.
I'd like to make a general comment that, I mean, one of the reasons I decided to run and join the select board was I thought both on the select board and through the town administrator and your team and in general, I thought there's a real opportunity right now to make some real positive changes in Carlisle in ultimately with the goal of providing the services to the town that they need, that they demand, in a way that respects the taxes they pay and how those expenses are being used. And a tremendous amount of progress has been made, but I want to make the point to everyone that progress is not a straight line. There are going to be missteps, there are going to be mistakes, and one of the things I wanted to communicate to Ryan was we shouldn't be afraid of making those mistakes, and when they happen, I think we all need to, you know, be receptive to the criticism, but keep pushing forward, because I do think we have the common goal of implementing change for the better in Carlisle and fixing some things that haven't been working well and putting some new things in place. And so we just need to be patient with it. We need to be tolerant of the missteps. And in Ryan, you know, I just said I encouraged him to keep pushing And don't be afraid of that. And I think we'll get to a much better place. It'll never be perfect. We're never going to solve all the problems. Massachusetts will make sure of that. But, real progress is being made, and we need to keep driving forward on that. But ultimately, it's about providing the town with the services that they need and demand.
Right.
Great, okay, that's well said. Anyone else, or you want, okay.
Hope you
On the
all
go-
get the pleasure someday of a public evaluation.
When they go like this.
They're all awkward.
Red on his face.
Yes.
Well,
And I still don't like you.
Honestly, when you're a boss, you get kind of a public evaluation all the time.
all the
You
time.
get a
All the
what?
time.
You get a public evaluation pretty much
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You get feedback right away.
I'll publish your next one of the mosquito. We'll see.
That's different. You're right, no, you're right.
Yeah, or on the website. The town administrator goals for fiscal year '25, Ryan had provided those, his proposed goals. One of the things that I actually had thought about in this, and I just wanted to kind of kick off this idea, but, when Ryan came in, we had tied this to, basically, it's contractual in timing and in nature, because these evaluations are done at this time of year, just based on when he was hired. But I, in my mind, most of, Ryan's goals are really aligned with our goals as a select board, and I want to figure out if there's a way to really meld those so that when the select board sets our goals for the year, those essentially become Ryan's goals. Not that I think these are too far from it, and I think there are some nuance too, where Ryan has some personal goals, which he's trying to have us adopt, which are good, personal meaning his professional development, which I think is great that he wants to undertake that. But I do want to try and see if we can, rather than have two sets of goals where at the end of the year we look and say, well, did we accomplish our goals? And really, that should be tied to Ryan and,
Yeah, they're not on the same
They're not on
cycle.
the same cycle, and they may not be 100% aligned. And so
Yeah.
if there's a way we can do that, and I asked Ryan to think about that as well, that, I don't know if you want to go through this, go through your goals, and I don't know if that changes our, Ryan's doing a great job. Our evaluation indicates that, so I'm not trying to rock the boat, but I think that if we can somehow tie them closer to our,
He doesn't, his goal cycle is a historical artifact of when he was hired, right?
Yeah.
correct.
We can change it, right? We can put him on our we need to do our calendar based on the fiscal calendar.
Correct.
So we have less flexibility, but is there any
But
reason
I
he
thought his
can't be?
contract says that we will
But
evaluate him.
Soon is a new contract, right? When's the next one?
It's in
You
June.
decide now
We are, right, we are in process with the attorneys to
So you
start
could-
that
you
process.
could-
We can do that with the next contract to have that
Yeah,
as part
so
of
you,
it.
right, so there's nothing statutory that says we can put him on our timeline, right? I guess. That's-
Just not this moment.
No, I know,
Right.
but
Right, yeah.
in the long run.
But I just throw that out there because I think that would be helpful, and
Okay.
Well, and just specifically thinking practically, for instance, about how we've done our goals in the past, we've typically, started in July, talking about goals for that actual fiscal year. Because we want, if they're new board members, they should be participating in that, right? But then we have this situation where, right, we're doing our goals in the midst of the actual year, and that's already
No,
started.
but is our goals for our upcoming term, or is it for the
It's for the,
fiscal
that
year
fiscal,
coming?
no, like, our goals are for fiscal year '24, the ones 25, the ones we have right now.
But
That
Barney,
we did this summer, right?
Scott stepped into that position this year, so these goals were already established.
No, I'm not
and-
arguing about that, I'm just saying,
You were involved in the goal-setting
the select
exercise
board.
for the select board?
Yeah, for the select board.
Right, but not
No.
these goals. on the-
right, because this happened the summer before,
Yeah, this is garbage. I
the
don't know.
20, no, go to the 24,
Oh,
go
I'm
down
sorry.
into the section
But
before
we
that.
did,
Yeah, yeah.
Go
No,
to
yeah,
the section
no,
before it.
So-
It says,
No,
oh,
it's fine.
anyway.
To get back on track, though,
Yeah.
I think if, Ryan, you want to go through these, and if we as a board want to just, confirm or change or whatever, but it would be helpful, I think, for you to just talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so I did try to align I did try to align my goals with yours.
Machine must have given up.
I see the difference, clearly there's a difference between our jobs, but my job is to execute your goals and to try and help you accomplish them in certain pieces of them. So I always have your goals as my goals. I just tried to make some quantifiable
You want tangible,
things to hit that meet your goals. So,
that can actually be achieved. Did I say that out loud? No. I'm just kidding.
so I can go through quickly
yeah.
financial sustainability. The capital plan still has a couple layers that need to be added. One that's clearly missing is ADA compliance, and another one is horizontal construction layers, which is your culverts, et cetera. So just making that model you've asked me to build better. And then your shared services, you heard a little bit about that tonight. That's a goal of yours that you've been trying to accomplish. So I think my goal is to get you across the finish line with that in terms of getting the grant and getting the people in here with your limited time to talk about it. Carlisle character, finalizing that fire station renovation project so that we can understand if that is a go or not. And then I think there's a real need to finish the long-term maintenance planning for the bog, because a lot of those questions are not only financial, but the character of the town, where is it going?
Yep.
And I am helping them to bring a draft into the budget process that would start that process. My job is to manage them to get to the financial solution, not to inject a policy. Environmental stewardship, you talk constantly about when are we gonna transition to municipal fleets, et cetera. I'd just like you to give information so that you're not in every budget cycle saying, well, is this an electric vehicle, and actually give you a tangible plan that you can work on. And then there are parallel processes going on, like MVP and climate leader, that need to be melded into the capital planning. And I see that as a function of the town administrator. For connectivity and access, I'm mirroring your goal and bringing town staff to all buildings. One of the things that we're doing is we're going to the library, and we're all gonna get our library cards and do a tour.
We have to
Visit
do
all
it.
our buildings. Yeah, have we, beyond the bog, have we been, bog house, have we been to any?
No,
we need to
get on that, all right?
Okay,
That's to
get on
me.
that,
That falls
yeah.
to me.
That's his goals.
Yeah.
That's right.
Digitizing records is a 5-10 year horizon thing that needs to be started now, so I'm just hoping to push that ball forward. And it's a political thing, so I've already poked your chair to try and get some of the boards online with a plan to digitize records.
Yes, it's,
Sharing community, ADA, planning is important to me, the town, and to the master plan, so I just wanted to get that on the radar. Stabilizing the Benfield property, that's not very quantifiable or accomplishable, but we should focus on it per your goals. And then just to explain briefly the staff goals, this is what I require of people that report to me. So one goal connected to the master plan, one goal connected to department improvement, and one goal connected to improving themselves. So I mirror that in my goals by doing the same. So my 3 goals that I report to staff and are accountable for are succession planning for all town departments. I think that reduces silos and all the things in the master plan, creates plan for the future, financial stability, all the things that the master plan preaches. For a department goal is creating a predictable and replicable outreach calendar so people can have more access to the executive office in town. And then my personal goal is to become a certified credentialed manager through ICMA, which you've invested in, and the state.
What does that mean, ICMA?
It's the International County and Managers Association. It's the top certification for a town or city manager. I have applied, they just have to say I'm worthy.
Are there any comments on this, questions?
I guess, I haven't thought through the other ones, but certainly on the finance side, I mean, these are good, and I love the tool, and I think,
You're in the wrong year.
oh, I am?
He's on the old ones,
Oh, okay.
last year's.
Even so, even more to the point, I think these are important, but we've been just spent an hour and a half talking about the big goal,
Yep.
which is to help guide us to true financial sustainability, which is matching the town's willingness to pay and what they want. And that has to be like our top priority, and it also needs to be, I think, Ryan's.
The other one that came out of my discussion with Ryan, and maybe it's there already, is really defining and socializing a vision for town hall and what it should become or be in terms of key goals. I mean, I was kind of expressing my view of how I saw town hall operating in the future to Ryan, and I think your thing was you guys should discuss that. I mean, some of these big questions about how much are we investing in digitization? How much do we want to provide services online versus in person? What, structurally, we're talking about the bylaws around the org structure and all those things. I think there's work to be done on really making sure we're in agreement about the vision for where we go with town hall, process-wise, service-wise. I think that's another big piece that's kind of baked into everything.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite.
What's
Right.
that?
I think that Carlisle it needs to be a nimble, small town that provides
Yeah.
Yeah.
innovative services and attracts the type of employees who are looking for, to work really hard, but in a flexible and productive way. Otherwise, I think the town, 10, 20 years from now, will be in trouble because it won't be able to provide the type of services that have been provided for the last 20 years. You won't be able to recruit the type of people that work that way. So the faster the town transitions to that, the better position you'll be in 10 years. But that's a policy thing. I mean, that's just what I think professionally. But that has a major impact on how the community gets services, so we really do need to talk about it.
Yeah, we really should. It's
Yeah.
an important conversation, set of
It's
conversations.
a high level
Yeah.
initially with a lot of
Well,
downstream.
Plus, I have to say, it's also kind of tied to the TA bylaw, because there are some departments that need,
Well, there are
in
some things
keeping this.
coming up, though, Kate, too, about that. Like, we're going to talk about hours, town hall hours, and as a board, I think we're going to have to decide that in November prior to the tax bills going out, so, we're going to make some of
Some
those.
pieces.
But you're right, we should conceptually talk about that. Maybe
Yeah.
we can carve out some time.
And I think if we can articulate, again, we're not looking for a 800-page document, but a vision, right? And then we, as a select board, need to evangelize it among the community and within town hall,
Right.
so that, if we're hitting a roadblock in a certain area, whether it be getting this record scanned, it's like, no, this is what we're moving towards. And then, any bylaw would kind of feed into a larger vision, and then you could tell a
Right.
story.
Right.
But I don't know, it doesn't sound like that's really been coalesced yet.
well, things in municipal environment always move glacially.
No. But I mean, among us, we can at least,
Right, we can
Yeah.
try to get,
Well, it's the same advice that you gave Ryan, we can break a few things. And some of them maybe we put back together, and some of them maybe we just sweep up and put in the bin, right? So I think, we should, I think we've been okay at being bold. I mean, we're certainly a bolder, in my years of government service, I think this is the most proactive.
but we're reaching the point where we want to go is in conflict with, it's future versus existing, what do you keep, what do you, like, how,
Yeah.
and we're kind of getting to that point where he's like, I feel like enough progress has been made, now it's time to really,
Well, empowering him to do more, I think
Yep.
we're lined up on that, right?
Yep.
We just had to get there, we got a plan, right? I'm saying we've, not that we've uncovered, it's been long.
ruin.
Ryan's model is putting in high relief, quantifying
Yes, that's
the
a-
challenge that we know has been there forever. We've
Right.
talked about it all the 20 years I've been in.
Right.
Regionalization and trades and blah, blah, blah. So we have finally, a tool that is really clear, and we need to use it. We need to go, somebody said it, evangelize, I agree with that. I mean, we've got to go out
Okay.
to the other board, go to the other boards and committees. Most of them either work for us or look to us, and I think we should be out there talking about it, and both things, right? We need a strong town administrator, we need to do certain things to be efficient that way, and we need to understand these goals really clearly. I think a lot of it's on us to kind of push that out.
And I think we need to figure out more ways to engage with residents.
Yes.
And find out
and
what
that's
they,
all right.
what they want, right? You talk about their demands, well, and some of it is people are generally pretty happy with how things are going, right? But for us, if we want
I
to,
love Kate's idea of using the MBTA stuff. Let's see how that goes
Yeah.
this month, but,
right,
you know,
but
do
some,
an event.
yeah,
Are we allowed to have, we can't have alcohol in public? Or can
No,
we?
we'd have to have it in my house.
Have it at the FRS or something. No, but seriously. No, you have a glass of wine and you talk about, I mean, that was something that's really come out of my, my committee's foray to these other boards, is how great was the kitchen table conversations? How much do we learn when we actually get together with other citizens and have a real honest discussion about the challenges? And unfortunately, there's so few opportunities. We all lead such
Right, right.
compartmentalized lives, and there's no public space here really, but, I mean, maybe we could rent ferns for a night. I don't know. I mean, we
Right.
should think about,
Right.
like, out of the box sounds cliche, but, kind of interesting ideas to get more people to come. If we have just coffee hour or something where like 2 people show up, but if we could do something social,
yeah.
all right.
In
Anyway.
an effort to keep us on target.
thank you.
I think we got to, no, this was good. I think we're going to move on. Do we have to approve those goals, though, at this meeting, or what would you like to do? What would we like to do, sorry, as a board?
like
Well, I'd just say, we offered some feedback, and I don't know if that changes how you're thinking about any of this, Ryan, but maybe we should have a, sort of another
Should have another, yeah. You wanna take
conversation
another,
about it.
like, you
And
wanna-
I don't know if you want to, I mean,
What specific feedback, though?
Yeah.
You
Well,
probably
on
want
the-
some specific tangible goals, right?
Only if you're
Yeah.
if you're gonna rate me on it, then obviously, but the, feedback on should I be focusing on these things for sure.
Yeah.
Because I am right now, and if you
Right.
don't want me to, then
right,
I'm also focusing on
Personally, I
goals.
But we're giving you sort of
wrong
big
with any
picture
of these.
feedback, and most of your goals are specific.
Yeah,
Like,
That's the way they're supposed to be.
we just
maybe.
think,
They're smart goals.
while you guys are talking, I'm thinking, okay, there's holes in this capital plan that they need more info on in order
Right.
to make these decisions, right? So that, like, my goals are tied to filling in those holes and making sure you're getting stuff. So that's why I picked a lot of them. But, if you want,
Well, like the bucket of, I think one of the most important things in town hall, if not the most important, is attracting and retaining quality
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right? And obviously, we want to do some things that empower you to do that.
That's us. That's our goal.
No, but I mean,
That's our
like,
goal.
well, no, but
You know,
he,
yeah.
Well, he's kind of, right, so if he were to put that down, then
But
we'd
that's
say,
like
that's
a-
not specific.
And if we
Yeah,
don't
that's what I mean.
empower
In
him,
fact, he
Yes.
does that every day, like,
Right.
he gets good people every day,
Yes.
so.
but it's kind of, it's a goal, it's a high-level goal, but it's not a,
I guess I don't know if the chair wants to take it on one-on-one with the administrator, but I would like to see the big picture baked back in somehow. This is a lot of small, discrete things that certainly Ryan can and will accomplish.
Right. The question, though, is Ryan's saying, if I'm rated on that, is
Yeah.
it, because it's so big picture. Now,
Right.
I tend to think that that's a better approach, because I think much of our evaluation here, the written comments were the big picture.
Right.
And we're focused on the big picture. So as much as you have the specific goals and we know you're accomplishing them, it's really about the big picture of,
Right.
our overarching goals. And
Right.
you're meeting those. You're exceeding them, or you're.
Yeah, you are, right.
right.
So, but it's tough because we have this very analytical way of evaluating them. And so he's looking to.
But actually, we don't. A year from now, when you put that form out again, we're not gonna say, well, he
I
did the
think I said in my
MVP.
comments, like, oh, these goals are nice, but
Right, all of our comments had, as you said,
Negotiation.
so you're not gonna be rated on these anyway. You're gonna be rated on big
Well,
picture.
no, it was one of the 6.
It was.
Yes.
It was.
Did you look at any of that? I just.
I did, yeah.
I'm like,
You didn't.
well, management, like, I don't look at the discrete, like, is he a good manager? He's a good manager, he hires well, people like
But
him.
there were,
David,
okay,
you
I'm
might
just saying,
have
I looked at a
you might have
couple,
different rating then, if
Yeah.
you looked at it.
No, I
because there were a couple
I've been doing
ones-
this a long time, I would not have a different, I'm just saying, we are big picture, we should be big
That's
picture.
right. It was-
So, my challenge is go back, you can have a discrete thing and a big picture thing.
You
I
know
would
what?
rather see
Do
some.
we really want him spending his time doing that, or do we want him just,
And don't put goals, I don't care, but
I mean,
that's the goals that we're
honestly,
gonna have.
you know, or do we want him filling holes in the,
He will do that,
doing actually what he's saying that he would like to do here?
I mean.
You know what, Kate, I'm changing my tune a little bit, that's a good point, at least for this year, let's figure it out for the next thing. So I
Yeah,
would
this-
recommend that we may just,
These
you
are
know,
fine.
these are, because
These
they are in keeping, I didn't see anything out of.
No,
like,
Yeah.
of course they're
And they
keeping.
are specific, and you can rate on them, because you can say, yeah, you did it, no, you didn't. And one of the things, when I saw them, when I did my evaluation with them, was to say, maybe these should be sorted into long and short-term goals, because the ones that you don't think you're gonna be able to accomplish right away, maybe should be put in a somewhat,
Or where
you
it
know,
says
but I
start a
just-
plan rather than complete.
right.
Yeah.
But I do understand how he categorized them, and, that was
It's in
just
line with the
something.
master plan and all that.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't think we should be spending a whole lot of time on this.
All right,
Anyone else?
I mean, if he
Well,
weren't
and he-
doing a good job, I would not be saying that.
And to David's point, I mean, the performance categories are like staff management leader. We have those
Right.
high level. I
Yeah.
think we all just populate those. So I think it's probably good for you to have some achievable, tangible goals versus like,
all right.
Okay, so do you want to vote to include these as his goals for 2025, 6, fiscal year 25?
sure.
Just so that it's.
Does it have to be a
known?
vote?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so I move, we include these goals for
Town administrator.
town
for fiscal year-
administrators' evaluation of fiscal '25.
Second.
Okay,
I can almost not even talk.
When is his contract up for renewal? Is
so,
it June 30?
well, if we're
No.
going to cancel, I think it's what, in February? or
August.
we
No,
have
but
to
when is it-
notify
what's
him,
the
but it's-
period?
Yeah, it's
August.
June, isn't it?
Well, your hire date was
August
August
24th.
Yeah,
20
but by
something.
June, we have to kind of have it all.
Right. But can we,
No?
You have to notify me by February.
February.
right,
we're
right,
notified.
but let's assume, what I'm trying to say is if we fast forward past that, can, first of all, when you do the renewal, can we line it up to June 30?
So I asked for that mid-contract,
Yeah.
and the answer was, and I respect the answer, was we don't want to set that precedent of
No,
renegotiating,
no,
but
but
you absolutely can. and
Next,
I'm going to
this
suggest
coming
that
This
you-
coming
So
contract.
assuming that, because these goals will take us out essentially, that's my point.
Right.
I'm fine with these goals, they're gonna take us not to August, take us to
End of
June.
June.
Okay.
And with the assumption that we're gonna renew, and that that's gonna be in line with our own terms, and that we will then develop, not in August, but in June or whenever we get around,
When we're
whenever we
doing
do
our own
goal
games,
setting.
goals,
We do our goal setting with him.
With
and
him.
Let's get them all lined up.
right,
That
Okay.
would be my,
rather than a
Request.
separate policy.
That's it.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
Okay, so we had a motion, a second, so all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, none opposed, so you now have some goals.
so these are stubbier goals, because you only have till June.
How awkward was that? What was more awkward, the evaluation or the goals?
You only have,
Very, very clear and smart.
you cut 2 months out of your time.
Okay,
Yeah, we just
so now
reduced
you have
the
a
contract.
second round,
We
Ryan.
cut back how long you had to get it
Almost not
done.
even-
Town administrator report.
All right, a lot of this I've communicated, so I'm
Push away
going to
from
keep
the
it at
table,
a
that's fine.
Yeah.
brisk pace. So the town hall space is being evaluated and reorganized down here to accommodate more council on aging human services and employee space while still respecting the town clerk and public interfacing space. So more to come. You will see 2 design options for that in the next couple months. In terms of HR, we have an update from Aubrey, who's over here. 15 applicants for the town clerk position, so we're gonna start putting
Wow.
together some interviewing. That is excellent news. That means we're
Yeah.
attracting a lot of candidates. We talked about Kathleen, and we have extended an offer for a DPW heavy equipment operator, which would come to you in the next couple weeks, assuming everything goes well with that offer. In terms of fall outreach, we had our town hall in the park. There wasn't a ton of people, as you can imagine for a first time you do things, but the engagement was good. Town hall staff, I saw Sandy in the street sweeper. So when you get your treasurer and the street sweeper and she understands the big picture, that's kind of what you're going for. So we hope to do that again. I think it would just be probably 1 hour off in the spring, probably, to take advantage of being outside and in the park. And then I've been invited to judge the PTO trunk or treat event. Costume is optional for me, so I will take the option. And I've sent this to you, but the Revolutionary Grave Marker installation at the Central Burying Ground is Sunday, October 27th at 3 p.m. I plan to be there,
I will be there too.
at least one of my
I'll be
kids.
there
I
too.
put it in my calendar.
Great. Community compact grant. So I put in for a $50,000 grant to defer the cost of the culvert assessment, and I found out today that we did get the full $50,000.
Excellent.
Which means more Chapter 90 for that big plan that we just looked at. Talked enough about the budget tonight. The Cemetery Task Force and Safety Committee have been meeting. So the Safety Committee saw the installation of their your four-way stop sign today, and they met with Mitch and our town council in order to better understand how to understand things like putting in signs, speed limits, and other things that they're considering, so they can make strong recommendations to you. Remember, they cannot make any recommendations without you, so everything will come to you. Cemetery Task Force, these people are tremendously dedicated already, which I knew they would be. They've been visiting neighboring cemeteries, capturing lessons learned. We have a meeting with a software provider that might help us to better mark and offer services for our residents that are in the cemetery. I don't know how to say that well. So they're off and running. They're going to be providing. I do want to put this on your radar that they have been discussing, because it's necessary, if you will or will not be supporting an expansion of the cemetery, which would be a very big topic that's not on your radar right now. So there's not a ton of space left in the cemetery, so whether or not you're going to continue to provide that service and how will be a topic for the next 5 years or so. So I'm looking for not a vote, but just any disagreement with, we are looking to purchase a utility vehicle, about $25,000 to help at the school. The reason for this is they were requesting a truck. We find the truck to be less safe in terms of maneuvering around students and buildings inside. This would be a street legal vehicle that's heated, so that would be better for the employees and accomplishes everything that a $90,000 truck would for $25,000.
Gee.
It helps the long-term plan.
I'm sorry, I really would feel much more comfortable if you spent more money.
The reason why I'm bringing it to you is we're using FY25 funds to do this.
Yeah.
We did
Okay.
reserve some debt space in the budget, and that went to facilities. We're going to use that for this. And we're hoping to get up to a $10,000 grant, or we think it's around $10,000 for safety through our insurance company.
When do you need to make the purchase?
We're going to purchase it now if I don't see any objection here.
We looked for donations too.
No, I'm just, at some point,
No, we did.
if we have 100,
Oh, the ARPA money?
the next meeting, I want to close out ARPA, so if we end up with like, once we know what the fire station OPM is going to require, I don't know if there's any money left over that can go to one of these things that are out there that need to be funded.
I'm a little punchier now than I was earlier in the night. It's going to require all of it. Fire station OPM, for sure.
Yeah.
And before you get too much further beyond the newly created committees, I wanted to mention that there are 2 new stop signs now on Rutland Road
You
at
just said
North,
that, right? Yeah.
which you said, and somebody's already run them. So just wanted to stop and maybe, let's make sure
And they must
everybody
go
we
in today,
know,
right?
we tell that there's a new stop sign there. Be careful, go slowly.
Have we got
Be sure
the
to
orange
shut.
flags like we did when we?
Yes, they have the orange flags.
It just must have gone in today, right?
They went in today and somebody has
go every
already
day.
run them. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, yep.
We have the police on that. We're doing a social
And
information campaign. Luckily, it's a four-way.
I'm just trying to use this channel. I
Where
know
did ticket
there's so many-
revenues go? Do they go?
That's how we're going to make the
Increase
shortfall.
revenue,
We're going to
right.
fund the shortfall.
With speeding tickets.
$10,000 tickets.
Yeah, okay.
All right, capital updates. We did the walkthrough, the final walkthrough of the Greeno Barn project. Just tremendous effort by the staff and everybody. Took Sylvia out there in conservation, and everyone's happy with the project. The last thing is the cupola needs to be moved to the Historical Society, and the slate is going to be moved to the DPW. It's been seeded, so there's already grass growing. And we did remove some of the discolored, it wasn't asphalt, but it looked like stone, so that it matches the area. So everything has been done to everyone's standards.
Yeah, I was just over there. Really, it's amazing.
It is amazing. You
What
don't
they
even,
did over
you
there.
can't even imagine there was a barn there.
And and the grass is already growing, and yeah, they did a phenomenal job. Everybody involved.
Yeah.
The sustainability part is something I think we should really be proud of too as a
And
town.
that's on Julie too.
It's a model. Yeah.
Julie did a great job.
Yeah.
It's over 90% recycled.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible.
That is incredible.
All right, Corey Auditorium lighting, looking at a couple weeks left for this project. We're just waiting for little pieces of equipment. We're gonna put together a video using the new lights for the town, and we'll show that to you. But another success story, thanks again, as I keep saying, to Jeremy and his volunteerism. I visited the dog park this week on a walk I was doing with a resident to see the progress. If you haven't seen it, you're gonna be shocked. It is almost
Yes.
fully complete. They're starting to install the fence. And it might be open for dog residents later this fall, so I hope you'll all bring your dogs. The
You bet.
contract for Central Burying Ground, so this was one of the CPA projects approved at town meeting. Phase 1 opened up the trees. If you look from Central Park, you can see the Litchfield seat is much more prominent now. And then all the trees that are being removed are to protect the graves that are in there because of their historic nature. Once the tree work is complete at the end of this month, then the grave restoration will start, so they're gonna straighten them, clean them, and make sure that they all look the way they're supposed to or the way they were intended to. And lastly, the roof on the Litchfield seat's gonna be repaired, all the wood. We're hoping to use the slate from Greeno to serve as the
Yeah.
tiling there, which I think would be a great.
'Cause I think they were going to put wooden shakes, but this will be much better.
We're gonna try.
Yeah.
See if that's possible.
Yeah.
For building construction projects, so the library building committee met Friday and they selected CMS. You'll recognize that name from the police station as well. So I am negotiating with CMS 2 different contracts, one for the OPM services at the library and one at the police station. And we are considering how much coverage we'll need, considering they're concurrent, but they are separate contracts and we can't negotiate them together. The police station renovation, same highlight from you, CMS is the choice for OPMs. If we're not able to negotiate a contract that's favorable to your police building committee and your library building committee, then we'll go down to the second choice and then the third choice until we have an OPM. And you've received all of the information
Yeah.
about our October 15th meeting where we're reviewing all of the proposals. We can review the proposals at the meeting. The reason why we sent it out ahead of time is it is a lot smoother if you do it ahead of time. So the more work you do ahead of time, the easier that meeting goes, but we're here.
Have those proposals been vetted for completeness? We don't have to do that, right?
No, I'm doing that, yep.
You did that,
I
okay.
have not seen any defects in any of them.
Okay, good. I just want to be sure, because,
I'll do if we're throwing one out, it'll be my call on that one.
yeah, okay.
I also can't vote in that, just so you know, because you guys are the
Understand.
design selection committee. So you have to shortlist to some number, you can't shortlist to one. And then the negotiation starts, and then it goes to the appointing authority, which is the select board. So
I'm sorry, you said you got to negotiate with more than one?
so you create a list
Yeah.
of at least.
It's a
2 or
ranked order
3,
list.
and then I
Okay. You
negotiate.
start with the one on the top of the list and you go down.
And I am allowed to throw them out, but that would be awkward with
Yeah,
you guys. Because you're the select board and my bosses.
And we would
Some
slap you
upcoming
around.
discussion points. Town hall hours, you're having a discussion with the COHS, not only to talk about potential community center and options there, but also service levels and the future of COHS services. So it should be a good discussion.
When is that meeting?
That will be the 12th.
November?
That's our next one, isn't it? Oh, no, is it
No,
November?
it's not, it's in November. It's not the
November 12th.
October
November
The
meeting.
new
12th.
meeting is.
Yeah.
Okay, so that might be a good time to roll out a beta of, like, they should hear, because they're going to want their center, right? I think they need to understand our finances.
So was invited to a strategic planning session with them, and
Yeah.
they have heard a lot of this information. They did digest it. and
Maybe they did.
But I
It's really
think
to
they're
come up with
also-
services.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Well, they continue to have their meetings, I think they're still every Friday, aren't they? Every Friday morning, the group that's specifically focused on the community center.
Yeah.
I wonder if it would make sense to do
Yeah,
more, because
yeah.
it was the session I was at, right, where you laid stuff out, yeah. This makes it much more clear what we're up against in terms of
Yeah.
projects we want to do.
Right.
Need to do.
Yep.
And then the town clerk appointment, so you guys talked about that while I was gone, and that's coming, so
Right.
be prepared.
Right.
Quickly signed, we approved the Savard Light Opera fall musical sign, the Friends of Concord Carlisle wrestling sign, the CPC sign, the Umbrella Stage Company's upcoming theater sign, 2 of them for the Umbrella Stage Company, and then one to note real quick, the use of town property for the poppy display. Debbie Bentley deserves a lot of credit for this. As a veteran, I certainly appreciate it. It's a 10-day display. This year, the number of poppies is 250 to honor the coming 250th celebration of Lexington and Concord, which is pretty cool. So it'll be there for Veterans Day. And just like when communities take the time to do that, I think it's important. For staff recognition, I'd like to recognize Officer Andrew Corwin, who graduated from the National Passenger Safety Certification Program. Anyone who's had kids recently, in the last 20 years, 30 years, knows you go to the police station and they make it good.
Yeah.
Because who knows how to do that besides people who have done this. So Officer Corwin went to this training. He's a trained technician and is providing that service to the community, and I think that's great. So not only is that outreach, but it's community safety and gives people peace of mind. So it makes the police department better. And I included a link if you want more about Safe Kids. Some upcoming dates of interest included the additional select board meeting on the 15th, just letting everybody know about that. We've had some questions about Columbus Day versus Indigenous Peoples Day. In the personnel policies, it's Columbus Day. We brought that to your attention last year, which is why we're calling it Columbus Day. We don't have an opinion either way, but that is something that has come up in comments to the staff. Why or why not is it called what it is? So just informing the board of that. And then you'll note that the Thanksgiving Day holiday also in the personnel policies has the day after Thanksgiving as a holiday. So just those back-to-back days. And that is my report.
So I got a question. The agenda that's in your part of the report is for the 22nd and has 2 hours of fire station OPM interviews.
Yes.
Is that really what, I thought that's what we're going to do
The 15th.
on the 15th, yeah.
No, next week we're narrowing it down.
Oh, and then we interview
We
them.
want to interview, and then they come,
And then 2 hours of interviews? Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
You remember when I said, are you sure you want to be the design selection committee? This is why, but it is important. It is
But
important.
really, it takes like an
So
hour
normally
for
you would
each?
appoint a whole committee to do this, which is why.
Right. But how many we down selecting to?
So there's 6. Usually you shortlist at least 2 or 3.
Okay.
And each interview is about half hour.
Okay, so you've kind of been generous here, but,
well, and you need a little time to then discuss
Between.
what you thought, yeah.
okay.
you know.
All right, okay, fair enough.
And everyone, please read Ryan's email from today, which,
Yeah.
Yes.
you know,
You got to
gives you
restudy the
some
packet.
homework.
Yeah, yeah,
Gives you some
Yes.
homework for people you reach out to
okay.
For next week.
for next week. So you got to get on that
We do it
this
right.
week, like tomorrow.
But I saw that even, but do we have to talk to people, or can we just read the packet?
We gotta,
You gotta-
No, you got
gotta
to
call
check
their
references.
given
references.
each of us one firm that we have to review, we have to do, it's kind of what
Why
we,
didn't he?
Well, wait, but you're going through all the firms and grading all of them, right, on the scoring sheets?
Yes.
Right, so they're going to be, there's 6, right?
But they all
So
put
you have
written
to read the-
proposals together,
Yeah,
right?
but you have to read the proposal and then use the scoring sheet so that we're consistently
Right, but what,
scoring
I'm okay
each
with
of
that,
them.
but what's
And
this?
then one of those 6 has been assigned to you, and you're supposed to call and get references.
4 of their
before
references.
Next Tuesday.
Can't we just email them? We need your
You can.
references.
yeah, you can just,
Come on,
No, they've given you references.
you
feel like
just need to email the reference and say,
hey,
and you think that staff should do this, is what you're.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. That's a purchasing function. Seriously.
purchasing
All right,
is-
I'll do whatever, but, you know.
So you don't
think
think we're
it's-
deflecting it to you? The rating has to be done by the designer selection committee, so you discussing your references allows you to have the same footing. The staff can give you that information, but
Well,
I didn't
Gretchen's
make-
doing one of them, because we have 6 people, and so Gretchen's, so you are allowing a staff person to do it.
because I didn't want to give you 2 for this reason. But I'm glad to take one.
You can
Already
take
been
mine.
assigned
You can take
yours.
mine.
It says David. references.
Oh, you beat me to it, David.
Give
Review,
one to Aubrey.
No, let's not get into
Let's
this.
go,
let's go.
That can be
Let's go.
offline.
I think we're reviewing of warrants and minutes at this point. Did you?
Before we do that, have we done the agenda for the 22nd? I just
Well,
wanted to
that's
come
how
back.
this all came up.
Well, I just wanted to say, Scott had mentioned ARPA going on there.
Yeah.
And then also, did we want to, I'm just remembering that Aubrey was saying, we need to make the decision about town hall hours by,
November. In
before
November.
Thanksgiving, basically.
Before this one.
And, right, and so,
We can
the
do,
22nd, basically, we have one meeting after that that's in November, where we would have to sign off. So do we want to at least have the presentation about what's being suggested
two
for
meetings in
town hall
November?
hours, for us to digest a
Two
little
meetings
bit.
in November.
We have
And
two
then we
meetings
vote-
in November.
We added a.
Because we have the
Oh,
town hall.
that's
so we
right, that's
just
right. Okay,
gained-
sorry.
We gained 3
You're right,
hours.
you're right. So we could do it, a 1-2 in November.
The
Okay.
next scheduling session for the agenda, we will review that.
Yeah.
I do have a
Okay.
question about the town hall hours meeting, though, and if we need to invite other boards that, to come in for this,
Participate, or
to participate, that will be affected by it. But
committees, you mean other board chairs?
I was thinking mostly elected boards that have their, so that it's not down.
Maybe
you know.
we could ask the administration to send out an email, maybe it's more effective from us, but just to the chairs of each of the boards to discuss it at their next meeting, and give them, except we haven't set the hours yet, to be able to.
Right.
Yeah, so, but I think if we
But I think,
actually invite them before the hours are set
Yeah,
for their
like the first
input,
November
rather than
select
after
board.
the hours are set, it would
Right.
be better.
Like the first select board meeting in November, where we get a sort of a, initial presentation, we invite those chairs to join us, so we
Yes.
can all be responding to the,
Yeah, then
Yeah.
they could take that back to their,
that's only gave them 2 weeks, so
Right.
It's likely that any decision you make wouldn't take effect until several months later. So there's a lot to,
but it'll be printed up and sent out in the tax bill, which is why we've got this deadline, right?
so if you wanted the change implemented for the next tax bill,
For
then that-
January
that
1.
is true.
Yeah,
We're trying to force a decision here. However, I wouldn't have something take effect 2 weeks later, because we still have to vet staff with children and other changes and exceptions to the hours. It's going to be a rollout it's going to be a longer rollout. than
so
just 2
you're
weeks.
suggesting we would just leave the town hall hours the way they are for that January tax bill mailing?
I would decide what you want to do for town hall hours and then project a change in the future.
Okay.
And then socialize that change.
okay, so
All right.
has any information, at one point I know Aubrey did some sort of a,
So-
how old is that information now? Do we have to revisit it? I mean, because we have a whole bunch of new employees.
Sure, so I did a couple different memos, so when, I canvassed the residents, I also canvassed staff, and so I think it would be good to have a more up-to-date idea of what that looks like, and also the information I pulled together for other towns, comparing that, so let me put that together for November.
Okay, so, and then I think still, when we have this presentation, if at least the chairs of those other things are notified that maybe they could come and listen to this presentation at the
But it's
same
not
time
as-
as we're receiving it,
Yeah,
it would not be a
Okay.
bad idea.
good. All right, can we move on?
Yeah.
yes.
I'm sorry, I have one more thing.
Ah,
So the schools have vetted a list of technology, everything from a Sony CD, DVD player, to printers and computers, et cetera. They do this every year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So technically, I am the chief procurement officer, so I have to allow them to donate this the way that you do.
yeah.
So I'm assuming that you're okay with that, without seeing everything, or do you want to vote on it?
I'm good relying on the town
It
administrator.
gets donated to some worthy organization.
usually I think Bob Supnick comes in.
And then we're going to clarify this, because this is technically operating funds from the school, which should be done by the business manager or delegated to Jim from the school committee, so we'll get that delegated. So it'll be clear who is the chief procurement officer
Okay.
for who.
But for now,
But we've done it this way for years and
Yes.
we've never gotten in trouble, so I'm just letting you know about it and out of transparency, and then we'll have a better solution in the future.
okay,
I think that's
For it.
acceptable. Everyone? All
yeah,
right.
fine.
School committee did vote on it, so someone's voted on it.
Okay.
They've
Do we have to
declared it
do
a
the
surplus.
cemetery deed?
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
We have to do that in the warrants and minutes.
All right,
Right.
so I move acceptance of the minutes as corrected.
in the
Did
packet.
everybody got the corrected ones in the packet?
Second,
Okay, any discussion?
I wonder if she got the typo I had, because I sent her one typo, and I forgot to check that. Doesn't matter,
The
it's a
only-
typo.
The change I had was relative to the discussion we
Yeah.
had with, you know, how we wanted the TA bylaw. And
Right.
how we wanted it. I just
Right.
wanted to make sure that was clear that what the select board wanted. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, none opposed. And then the last one, Kate, can you make it on the cemetery deeds?
Oh, hang on.
Or whoever's,
it's,
is it up top or down
it's
below?
page 66, I don't know if you're following it.
Yep.
Yeah,
do
I
that.
can do the
Or
cemetery
you put the,
deeds.
no, that's good.
Yeah.
Barney?
Deeds, I got them. Deed transfers. Move to transfer land in the public burial ground at the Green Cemetery described as follows. Lot D, 349, graves 1, 2, 3, and 4, to Despina Anton of 1145 North Road.
Second,
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. None opposed? And then we have liaison reports, but because it's late, I think we're just going to pass on that and move right to community input. There's
Christina?
community, anyone? Christina, anyone online? Okay. Going once, going twice? All right, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Very good, thank you, guys.
thank you.